Welcome to God Tier Fan Fiction. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Naruto crashed Shikamaru and Temari wedding? If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Shikamaru was lying in his favorite position to see clouds in the late afternoon. His closest friend, Shoji Akamichi, sat next to him. After consuming a bag of chips, the Akamichi remarked, "Hard to believe that it's been 6 months since the war ended." "Yeah," Shikamaru answered. Shoji got up and moved to the railing overlooking the recently reconstructed market area. "Amazing how everything seems to be returning to normal so quickly. Not that long ago the world was ending and now it just keeps going." "Normal," Shikamaru remarked, adding, "I'm not sure it will ever be that again." Shoji turned to face his companion. "What do you mean, Shikamaru?" "So many things have changed," Shikamaru said. "Tsunade has retired as Hokage and Kakashi-sensei takes her place. The 5 great shinobi nations are allied with each other, instead of in constant conflict or teetering on the edge of. Naruto is not the hated outcast but the beloved hero. Sasuke is not the traitorous criminal but the repentant sinner." Shoji turned to face the bazaar once more. "Yes, but people are still going shopping every day, fall in love, raise families, be with friends. But speaking of things changing, what's the latest news from the Cage Summit?" Shikamaru sat up and stretched. "Should be over soon. Kakashi-sensei will probably return from the Land of Iron within the week, and Naruto too. Gets named the Hokage and he spends most of the first 6 months of his reign outside the village." "While we're on the subject," Shoji replied, "you've heard about the people who want you to be the next Hokage?" Shikamaru gave his friend a fierce look. "Please don't tell me that you're one of them." Shoji gave a headshake. "I was there, remember? You can't see the things that we saw Naruto do and not want to follow him." Shikamaru reclined. "Why would they even want to give me that job? Such a drag." "You're smart and talented," Shoji said with a sigh, "and everyone knows you played an important role in defeating the Akutsuki and in the war. To be honest, if it weren't for Naruto you would be first in line to be the 7th Hokage." Shikamaru was becoming really irritated with this topic. "Let's talk about something else." After a brief period of silence, Shoji spoke. "How's your mom?" "She's all right," Shikamaru replied, rolling onto his side. "The news about my dad hit her pretty hard. How's your dad?" Shoji let out a sigh. "Some days he's good and others he's not. It's hard to lose your 2 oldest and closest friends like that." Shikamaru got to his feet. As Shikamaru departed, he heard the response, "Yeah, see you, Shikamaru. I should probably head home. See ya, Shoji." Shikamaru moved through the streets in the direction of his house. Occasionally, people would recognize him as he passed. While some would smile and wave at him, most people would double-take as he passed them. A couple of girls once saw him and chuckled to themselves as he went by. Shikamaru had amassed a tiny but devoted fandom in the months following the war's conclusion, but he had no interest in interacting with them. Shikamaru noticed the sound of a vacuum cleaner coming from the living room when he arrived at his house. When he entered, his mother was occupied with cleaning the house. Before making a comment, Shikamaru took a time to survey the scene. "Mom, didn't you clean a couple days ago, and a couple of days before that?" Yoshino looked up from her sewing, not realizing her son had arrived. "Don't bother me, Shikamaru." A part of Shikamaru missed the controlling women who would scream at him to finish his work, and he sighed. Shikamaru said, "All right mom," and turned to walk out of the room. "Shikamaru." Shikamaru came to a halt and looked at his mother. "Yes, mom?" Yoshino asked, "Shikamaru, when are you going to have some kids?" The young man's eyes grew wide with astonishment. "What, kids? What are you talking about?" Yoshino seemed very sad, averting her gaze. "It was just something that I was thinking about." "Mom," Shikamaru remarked, "I don't think that the family life is one for me." Temari was seated across from Baki, her former teacher, in a tea restaurant in the hidden sand. After taking a drink of tea, she said, "You heard anything about when Gaara and Kankuro are coming back?" Baki gave a nod. "They should return by the end of week. The Cage Summit is finally nearing an end." Temari set down her cup. "About time. Who would have thought that they would be there for so long?" "It's not unexpected," Baki said, "not after the war that we just finished fighting. A lot of incredible, world-shattering things happened very quickly." "I suppose that's true," Temari answered. "Though the leaf did delay it when they took the time to swear their new Hokage into office." Baki took a drink of his tea. "I suppose they did, but Lady Tsunade made a fine choice for her replacement in Kakashi. Though I wonder how long it takes before he moves aside for Naruto Uzumaki. He's not the only worthy candidate for Hokage, you know, Temari remarked, grinning playfully. Baki set down his tea. I suppose he's not, but he's the only one that's relevant. I know, Temari replied. Unlike you, I was there for that final battle. Even watching as someone not from the Leaf, every fiber of your being made you want to follow him. Baki laughed. Better watch yourself, Temari, you might make me start questioning your allegiance. The discussion soon turned into a happy chuckle. A quiet descended upon the table as the two gradually recovered. A sand kunoichi suddenly dashed into the store and skidded to a stop beside Temari and Baki's table. Temari gave the girl a curious glance. Matsuri? Panting as she caught her breath, the girl murmured, have you heard anything about Gaara? Is he coming back yet? Temari couldn't resist grinning at the younger girl. Calm down, he'll be back by the end of the week. You'd be acting the same way if a certain boy was coming instead, you know, Matsuri shot out, shaking her head. Startled, Temari sprang back in her chair. Well, what are you talking about? I'd never act that way. Matsuru chuckled. You know you would, and I know who you would do it for. Temari's face turned a vivid scarlet. She took a drink of her tea, trying not to show how embarrassed she was, all the while thinking about a particular Leaf shinobi. Shikamaru was lying in his bed in the late morning. Even though the alarm had gone off a few hours prior, he was unable to muster the motivation to wake up and take action. He had lain there doing nothing, thinking nothing, and making no plans. A knock on his bedroom door diverted his attention from his inaction. Shikamaru, it's me. There's a messenger from the Hokage here to see you. In his bed, Shikamaru sat up. All right, Mom, I'll be down there in a moment. After dragging himself out of bed, Shikamaru dressed. He descended gently to the living room, where Shizune was waiting for him at the table. Across the table from her, the Nara clan head sat down. I would have expected you to accompany Lady Tsunade on her journeys. I'm surprised you decided to keep working in the Hokage's office. I thought about it, Shizune answered, but I decided that I should stay on to help Kakashi. Lady Tsunade doesn't need me to look after her all the time. Shikamaru gave a nod. So what's this message from Kakashi-sensei? Well, Shizune replied, it's not so much a message as it is a summon. The 6th Hokage has a new assignment for you. Shikamaru said again, an assignment, huh? He's giving me a mission? Shizune got to her feet. Come on, he'll tell you himself. Shikamaru said, Mom, I'm going, as he rose from his chair. I'll be back soon. Yoshino emerged from the kitchen. All right, you take care of yourself now, son. After a brief moment, Shikamaru grinned at his mother. Don't worry, I will. Shizune and Shikamaru then departed the home and began walking toward the Hokage residence. So, Shikamaru said, what's the news from the Cage Summit? They've been keeping a pretty tight lid on everything that's been happening there. Yes, Shizune responded. I still don't know all the details, though I know most of the major things that happened. Orochimaru, Kabuto Yakushi, and Sasuke Uchiha have all been given pardons for their past crimes, in light of their actions during the war. Shikamaru gave her a somewhat surprised glance in return. Sasuke, I understand, though I still think that's stretching things, but Orochimaru and Kabuto? Kabuto outright fought against us. Hell, his resurrecting Madara Uchiha was one of the reasons that things got so bad. Shizune gave a nod. In Orochimaru's case, his arrival on the battlefield and resurrection of the 4 previous Hokage helped turn the tide of the battle against Madara. Kabuto was a harder pill to swallow, but he saved Sasuke from death at one point during the battle, and without Sasuke we could not have won the war. Their pardons came with the stipulation that both would forswear their forbidden techniques, including the reanimation summoning, on pain of death. After giving it some thought, Shikamaru concluded that he might as well accept it. Anything else? Lots of things were decided, Shizune stated, though a lot of it comes down to little details and lots of new policies designed to prevent future wars. I understand, Shikamaru answered. There was not much noise for the remainder of the stroll. They soon reached the Hokage residence, where Shizune led Shikamaru to Kakashi's office. As they entered the office, they discovered Kakashi sitting at his desk reading a buka, surprisingly not one of the makeout series, while dressed in his office robes. He looked up from his book when he saw people entering the room. Ah, good, you're here, Shikamaru, he remarked, setting down his reading material. Shikamaru said, what do you want, Kakashi-sensei? Under his chin, Kakashi clasped his fingers together. As you know, I have just returned from the Cage Summit and there were a lot of important decisions made there. Yes, I know, Shikamaru replied, and a format change to the Chunin exams is one of the things we decided, Kakashi continued. Shikamaru asked, what kind of format change? Kakashi reclined in his chair. Firstly, from now on all of the 5 great shinobi nations will take part in the same exams, along with several more minor villages. That many villages? Gasped Shizune. But an event like that would involve large amounts of time and planning, not to mention money. Could we continue to hold 2 exams a year? Indeed, Kakashi said, an event such as that is very large. It was decided that the exams be held every 3 years, hosted by a different village on each occasion, allowing ample time for planning. Shikamaru replied, once every 3 years seems like too few chances for genin to advance. Kakashi gave a nod. Yes, which is why each village will hold their own smaller exams in each year that the larger event does not feature. Alright, I guess that makes sense, Shikamaru replied, but what does that have to do with me? Well, Kakashi replied, the first exam is be held 6 months from now here in the Hidden Leaf, and I've selected you to organize it. That surprised Shikamaru. You want me to organize an event of that scale in 6 months? Kakashi gave a nod. Kakashi picked up his book and turned to the page he had been on, saying, yes, I know that it's a tall order, but I think you're capable. Representatives from the other great shinobi nations will arrive and take part in the organizing. Shikamaru questioned, who are they sending? Kakashi flipped through a page in his book. The Hidden Cloud is sending Darui, the Stone Kitsuchi, the Mist women named Akira, and the Sand is sending Temari. Oh, Shikamaru remarked. Temari's coming? When will they all arrive? They should be here by the end of next week, Kakashi answered. If that's all? Shikamaru remarked, that's all, Kakashi-sensei, and walked out of the room. Shikamaru would have to set up a Chunin exam. Not too bad, he had done it before, but it was a drag because he had never had to do it on the magnitude that this would call for. He had served with both Darui and Kitsuchi during the war. Therefore he knew who he would be dealing with, so there shouldn't be any issues. Akira was unknown, but if she was like other of the ladies he knew, she might cause problems. Shikamaru's greatest worry was Temari. On the one hand, they had a history spanning almost 4 years, including prior work on exam organization, and they collaborated well. There was even a part of him that anticipated her presence. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that she might be the most problematic aspect of it all. Such a drag, Shikamaru remarked to no one in particular as he moved in the direction of no specific location. There was something you wanted to talk with me about, Gaara? When Temari's brothers returned from the Land of Iron, Gaara had begged to see him in his office as soon as they were comfortable. Temari had welcomed them. Temari had gone up to Gaara's office after helping her brothers unpack and catching up on some news. Gaara stated, I have a new assignment for you, as Temari walked into his office. Alright, Temari answered. New Chunin exams are being organized, to start 6 months from now in the Hidden Leaf, the case cage clarified. Gaara took a package of documents from his desk and presented them to Temari, saying, you are going to be our representative there while these events are being organized. I have all the details here. After taking the documents, the Sand Kunoichi started going through them. Ma, this is a lot to ask. Gaara questioned, do you think that you are not capable? Temari answered, of course I'm capable, merely commenting, and kept reading. I see Shikamaru Nara has been selected as the representative from the Leaf. Gaara gave a nod. Yes, that is the case. Is that a problem for you? Temari gave a headshake. No, shouldn't be. Very well then, Gaara answered. You're to arrive in the Leaf by the end of next week. You're dismissed. Before leaving the office, Temari bowed to her brother. She was staring at Shikamaru's name on the piece of paper she was holding as she went down the corridor. She was curious about his well-being and the possibility of spending time with him. Shikamaru was seated in a room in the Hokage residence designated as a meeting space for the Chunin exam organizers. A modest round table with 5 seats, one for each representative, was positioned in the center of the spacious room. 5 further rooms, each with an office, were adjacent. While he waited for the other delegates to come and start their first meeting, Shikamaru was reviewing some documents. As he reviewed the budget, Shikamaru said, well, I can't say that they aren't giving me enough money, can I? Flipping through the documents he was holding, he sighed. This is going to be such a drag. A knock on the door caused Shikamaru to turn his head. Come in. When the door opened, Darui was there. I'm sorry if I'm late. Shikamaru gave the Cloud Shinobi a smile. Late? You're the first one here. Darui sat down at the table and said, I am? Guess I'll just sit here then. Shikamaru started pouring papers again. So what's the hidden clouds part in this? With his hands behind his head, Darui reclined. I'm here to help organize and plan the exams. However, as you're the representative of the host nation, I will defer to your judgment. I will also relay reports on the progress and general plans of the exam to my village. The rest of the representative will probably have similar roles. Sorry if it's a problem. It might be, Shikamaru answered. With one eye, Darui looked at the Nara clan head. Shikamaru gave him a smile, and they both laughed and giggled before getting better and going back to their earlier activities. Kitsuchi entered the room when there was another knock on the door after some time. Shikamaru, Darui, it is good to see you again. Shikamaru raised his gaze from the paper he was holding. It's good to see you too, Kitsuchi. The stone shinobi sat down at the table. Are the other two arriving soon? Shikamaru turned to a different report. They should arrive shortly. The mist representative arrived late last night, so she might take a while. I see, Kitsuchi said, nodding. Just to let you know, Shikamaru, I have complete faith that you can pull this off. Shikamaru gave Kitsuchi a quick glance. Really? I'm not so sure about that. Kitsuchi gave a headshake. Don't be so modest, I know how brilliant you are. Remember the strategies you came up with during the war. If you had to organize this whole event on your own, you could. I hope that you aren't thinking of leaving it all up to me, Shikamaru grinned in response. Nonsense, Kitsuchi replied, I'm here to help. Well, I see you boys are getting all chummy up here. When Shikamaru looked up, Temari was smirking as she stood in the doorway. He grinned and chuckled lightly upon seeing her. I see you made it after all. Temari laughed. Be glad I did, you wouldn't get anything done without me. Shikamaru shook his head and put his palm to his forehead while maintaining his smile. Such a troublesome woman. Behind Temari, another woman emerged at the doorway. Hello, my name is Akira, I'm the representative from the Hidden Mist. Akira was a tall, blonde woman who looked to be in her mid-20s. Her figure was toned and athletic, and her confidence was evident in every motion. When Akira saw Shikamaru, she gave him a quick glance. She approached the table and took a seat across from him, grinning. Well, aren't you cute? Tell me, what are your plans for after we're done with this? Startled by this behavior, Shikamaru examined Akira warily and leaned back from her, raising one eyebrow. Temari remained in the doorway, furious. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Akira glanced at Temari behind her. Do I detect a hint of jealousy? Don't worry, I'm not that interested. Temari continued to look angrily at the mist kunoichi for a few seconds. It dawned on her then that everyone else in the room was staring at her. She took the last seat, blushing suddenly and laughing nervously. With a sigh, Shikamaru began to arrange the documents in front of him and distribute copies of pertinent reports to others seated around the table. Now that we're all here, let's get started. Temari stood outside the conference room in the corridor. She was waiting for Shikamaru to finish speaking to the others while resting against the wall after the session. The Nara clan head was the last of the representatives to exit the chamber. Shikamaru saw Temari after shutting the door. Was there something you wanted to talk about? Yeah, Temari replied. You interested in grabbing something to eat? Shikamaru smiled slightly and gave out a little laugh. Sure, why not? Where do you want to go? Temari paused to consider her response. How about a dango shop? Don't have any of those in the Sand Village. All right, said Shikamaru. Temari and Shikamaru headed to one of the village's more well-known dango shops after leaving the Hokage residence. Temari had an idea as they were strolling. Shikamaru, have you thought about making jonin? Jonin? Shikamaru answered. Not really, it seems rather unnecessary, not to mention a drag. Shikamaru, Temari replied, you're more than capable. You need to take things more seriously. Shikamaru let out a sigh. You're starting to sound like those idiots who think that I should be the next Hokage. The Sand Kunoichi said, to be honest, I would support you for Hokage if it weren't for Naruto. At least you realize that Naruto should get it, Shikamaru sighed. Temari laughed. Hey, I'm not stupid. Hey, I guess not, Shikamaru answered. They ordered 2 plates of dango and tea when they got to the restaurant after a little while. They waited for their food to be served while seated at a booth. The village seems to be recovering nicely, Temari said. It seems eerily similar to the way I remember. Shikamaru gave a nod. Yeah, I know. The architects have been going to great lengths to recreate the village as it used to be. Sounds like too much trouble, if you ask me, but they didn't, so here we are. Temari grinned. Hey, I guess you wouldn't understand someone having a passion and caring about something. Leaning back, Shikamaru placed his hands behind his head. Oh no, I do. I just don't see why it matters in this case. On a different note, Temari remarked, continuing to shake her head at the earlier remark. How are you doing, Shikamaru? Shikamaru said, me? Yeah, Temari said with a worried expression. It's been 6 months since your father died. How have you been holding up? With a sigh, Shikamaru turned to face the ceiling. Actually, it's not me that I've been worried about. It's my mom. Hearing the news about my dad's death, it changed her. She's less dominating than before, more melancholy. To be honest, I kind of miss having her push me around. Temari looked away from the Chunin. I'm sorry, Shikamaru. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow in her direction. Sorry, about what? I shouldn't have brought it up, Temari answered. No, replied Shikamaru, it's okay. Temari turned to face Shikamaru once more. I didn't know him very well, but I think your father was a great man. Thanks, Shikamaru muttered. Following that, there was a depressing silence at the table until the food and drink were served. The two started eating after thanking their server. When Naruto ducked into the restaurant, almost as if he was trying to avoid someone, Temari and Shikamaru were preoccupied. The blonde was waved over by Shikamaru. Naruto, over here. What are you doing here? When Naruto noticed Shikamaru, he turned to gaze at him with a hint of surprise. Shikamaru, is that you? He asked as he approached. Yeah, it's me, Shikamaru grinned in response. I'm surprised to see you here instead of Ichiraku's. Naruto began to appear generally irritated and crossed his arms. I normally would be at Ichiraku, but I've been having to avoid it. Shikamaru said, avoid it? Why's that? Naruto cast a fleeting peek over his shoulders as though he were going to divulge a serious secret. Well, there are these girls that have been following me. Some of them seem to be camped outside of Ichiraku, almost as if they were waiting for me. It's kind of creepy, to tell you the truth. Shikamaru chuckled. Looks like your fangirls have finally figured that out. Naruto gave Shikamaru a weird look. Fangirls? What are you talking? You don't get it, Shikamaru remarked, do you? Naruto began to appear irritated by the exchange. I don't get what? Temari laughed along with Shikamaru. You really don't get it. You're a hero, Naruto. You're famous. Many girls would love to just be around you. Naruto's eyes widened, and he looked from Shikamaru to Temari and back again. I still don't get it, he murmured, and I don't think I ever will. So, you two on a date? Shikamaru replied. No, we're not. Naruto bent over Shikamaru. Are you sure? I mean, you were eating together at a restaurant alone. Temari let out a sigh. A part of Temari wanted that it was a date, but she said, he's telling the truth, Naruto, we're not a date. Naruto gave a shoulder shrug. If you two say so. Suddenly, they heard people outside the restaurant yelling, Naruto, where are you? Naruto glanced to Temari and Shikamaru with a terrified expression. The hero of the leaf muttered, I was never here, and turned away from the voices. Shikamaru shook his head and grinned. That Naruto, at some point I'm going to have to thank him. Temari said, Thank him for what? Oh, Shikamaru replied, his return to the village has really attracted the attention of the fangirls. They've been bothering me less since he got back from the land of iron. Temari grinned. She mockingly said, fangirls, huh? Have any of them propositioned you? Offered themselves to you? If they have, then I wasn't paying attention to them, Shikamaru said in a detached manner. I'm not particularly interested in that right now, and in any case I just find it annoying. A part of Temari was relieved that he was ignoring these fangirls as she grinned. The remainder of the lunch was quite uneventful. They eventually departed from the eatery. As Temari and Shikamaru went out onto the street, Shikamaru glanced at Temari. I'll walk you back to your place. At that, Temari arched an eyebrow. Isn't your house in the opposite direction? Shikamaru gave a shrug. It is. This is a drag, but it's the courteous thing to do, right? Well, aren't you full of surprises? Temari grinned. Together, they made their way to the hotel where Temari would spend the foreseeable future. They arrived at the building's main entrance after a little stroll in comparatively quiet. Well, Temari replied, I think that this is where courtesy dictates you say your goodbyes. Grinning, Shikamaru turned to leave. Yeah, sure, see ya. Shikamaru, Temari said, I was serious, you need to start looking into becoming a jonin. Shikamaru glanced at Temari over his shoulder but remained silent. He pivoted and resumed his journey. Temari went inside after observing him till he was out of sight. At a nearby dango shop, Ino sat down with her best friend and asked, "What's new with you, Sakura?" Sakura said, "Oh, nothing," as she idly ran a hand over her hair. "Just the everyday business of running the medical corp. What about you? Must be hard to practically build up a whole division from scratch." With a sigh, Ino closed her eyes and leaned her head back. "You can say that again. Kakashi-sensei sure is slave driver. I never thought that I'd have to build a whole new communications unit from the ground up." A waitress brought them a dango. Sakura snatched a couple and nibbled into them. Still, Shikamaru probably has the toughest job. After opening her eyes, Ino reached for some dango. "Yeah, I never would have thought that he would go through with all that work." "It's been a couple of months since they started. How's he doing over there?" Sakura inquired. Ino sighed in response. "He says that they're going well, but not at so many words," but then she brightened up. "Though I do have some nice gossip." Sakura arched an eyebrow and said, "Oh, yes," Ino murmured, leaning in with that sly, naughty expression on her face that comes with gossiping. "Have you ever noticed Shikamaru and a certain Sand Kunoichi eating out together?" "I've seen them a few times," Sakura replied, "but it always seemed to me like they were just talking about work over lunch." When Ino reached the juiciest section of her gossip, she laughed. "Oh no, they've been going to eat together almost every day, sometimes by themselves and sometimes with others, but always together." Sakura leaned forward a little in expectation and then leaned back, her expression dubious. "Seriously?" she asked. Wait, how do you know?" With a faux indignation, Ino cocked her head to the side. "A girl can't tell all of her secrets, can she?" Sakura let out a sigh. Fine, just tell me." Ino laughed and grinned. "Don't you see? They must be dating." Sakura said in shock, "Shikamaru and Temari. Come on, you can't really believe that." "Why not?" Ino answered. "Well, to start with, she's from the sand," Sakura remarked. Ino gave a shoulder shrug. "Hey, you find love where you find love. And besides, this is Shikamaru we're talking about," Sakura replied. "Him and dating well, let's just say he's not a personal commitments kind of guy." "Oh, come on now," Ino said, half laughing, "you're underestimating him." With an evil smile, Sakura said, maybe. What about you, Ino? You must have your eye on someone. I hope you're still not chasing hopelessly after Sasuke." "Oh, please," Ino replied, "I'm over him. I do, however, have my eyes set on another teammate of yours." "Naruto?" Sakura cried, startled and slightly repulsed. "No," said Ino. "Sigh, you foolish billboard brow." Sakura gestured at Ino with her clasped fist. "Watch it, Ino pig." After a brief exchange of irate glares, the two sat down again and as nothing had occurred. A thought occurred to Ino, and she giggled a little. "You know, there used to be a time when nobody could stand Naruto. Now there's nobody in the village who's more popular with the ladies." Sakura chuckled at that. "Yeah, maybe, but he's not really sure what to do with them. As far as he can tell, they're just a bunch of weird girls who chase him around." "I know," Ino replied. "How can someone be so clueless?" Sakura talked in a more serious tone, and her body language changed significantly. "Considering how he grew up, I don't think he ever really learned what love is." "Oh, right," Ino answered. "Speaking of not recognizing love, what about Hinata?" Sakura let out a sigh. "The same old story. Even as close as they've grown to being, he's too oblivious to even think of approaching her and she's too shy to do it herself. I'm starting to think that someone needs to push them together." Ino said, "Are you going to do it?" "Maybe," Sakura said. "Let's talk about something else." "PFF'd, fine," Ino responded, taking a sip of her beverage. There was a little pause before Sakura spoke. "Are you thinking about taking the Jonin exams?" After giving it some thought, Ino put a finger to her chin. "That's a few months after the Chunin exams, right?" "Maybe. What about you?" "Most likely," Sakura answered. "You'll make it," Ino remarked, waving almost dismissively. "You're too good to not make it." Sakura said, "Thanks, you too." "What?" asked Ino. "What are you talking about? I'm way behind you." "You, Shikamaru, Choji, you'll all make Jonin easily, and let's not even talk about Sasuke and Naruto. Speaking of which, are they going to be in the exams?" Sakura gave a headshake. "I doubt it. Genin, Chunin, Jonin, it's not really relevant to them anymore. But Ino, you are more than skilled enough to be a Jonin." "Maybe," Inta answered. In any case, I'm too busy with the communications division to really try it this time around. Sakura answered, yeah, you're probably right, and then she burst out laughing. Ino gave her pal a questioning glance. What's so funny? Oh, nothing, Sakura said. It's just that I was thinking that Shikamaru will be too lazy to enter the exams and Choji won't enter if his best friend doesn't. Ino pressed her palm to her forehead and laughed. Yeah, probably. No matter how grown up they become, in some ways they never change. Sakura responded with a laugh. Yeah, that's true. What are Naruto and Sasuke doing these days? Ino inquired. Sakura took a minute to reflect. Well, Naruto's been out of the village on an extended training trip. Training? Ino asked, truly perplexed. Someone as powerful as him? Train? Sakura gave a nod. It's partly to avoid his fangirls, but believe it or not, yeah. And Sasuke, I haven't told anybody else this, but I got a letter from him. Ino's eyes grew wide with astonishment. Really? What did it say? Sakura muttered as she leaned forward. It said that he's finishing his journeys in the Land of Fire and he'll be back in the village in about a week. Excitedly, Ino began to bounce in her seat. Ooh, we should have a big dinner with all of us. Sakura questioned warily. All of who? The Hidden Leaf 12. Screamed Ino. And Sai. Ooh, yeah, probably bring Sai too. Sakura groaned, realizing that once Ino got an idea like this, there was no stopping her. The head of the Yamanaka clan got up from her chair and began to exit the eatery. I'm going to make the reservations right now. Ooh, and I can make special invitation cards. Sakura simply gazed at Ino as she began to leave the building. Wada, aren't you going to pay your part of the bill? Ino asked, walking out into the street without paying attention. Sakura sighed and rose from her chair. Fine, I'll take the bill. But she's paying for lunch next time. Shikamaru was preparing to leave his house for the Hokage residence early in the morning. He was walking carefully to the front door after taking a shower and getting dressed. The sound of his mother cleaning the home was becoming more and more familiar to him. Shikamaru heard his mother calling to him and the vacuum stopping as he passed the living room on his approach to the front entrance. Shikamaru, a letter came for you. I left it on the table. From who? Inquired Shikamaru. I don't know, Yoshino answered. There was no name and no address. Shikamaru approached the table and took the letter out of its envelope. It was cream in color and, in Shikamaru's opinion, elaborately embroidered to a rather distasteful degree. He read the letter aloud after opening it. Shikamaru, you are invited to dinner at Yakiniku-Q restaurant tonight at 7 o'clock. Dress casually. Yoshino became alert. Oh, a dinner date? Some girl have their eye on you? Is there a name? The letter was balled up and thrown in the garbage by Shikamaru. Nope, but Ino sent it. Ino? Inquired his mother. How do you know? Shikamaru let out a sigh. Firstly, only she would use a letter like that and think that it was stylish. Secondly, she chose Yakiniku-Q, one of our old favorites. Yoshino approached the trash and took out the letter. Does she want a date with you? Shikamaru chuckled briefly. No, to guess. Sasuke's probably back in the village and she's planning some kind of big reunion. Sounds like a drag. Yoshino read the letter herself and said, Are you going? Might as well, Shikamaru replied. If I don't, Ino will nag me about it to no end and that would just be even more trouble. Yoshino tossed the letter back into the garbage. Shikamaru, when are you going to find a girl? Shikamaru began to move back in the direction of the front door. He remarked, I told you, Mom, that isn't for me, as he turned into the hallway. Temari was eager to finish the day because the Chunin exams organizers had had a particularly demanding day. Temari left her office at 6:30 and headed to Shikamaru's. Temari tapped on the doorframe and took a quick look inside. Hey, you feel like getting dinner? Shikamaru raised his head from his workstation. Oh, sorry, I can't do that today. Temari was taken aback and somewhat disappointed, though she made an effort to hide the latter. Oh, why not? Shikamaru let out a sigh. Ino's got some big plans set up, I'm sorry. What? Temari mockingly questioned, she your girlfriend now? Shikamaru grinned. Huh, no, Temari sat down in front of the desk. Well, that's good. Oh? Asked Shikamaru. Is it now? Temari was taken aback by her statement. Oh. All I mean is that what I mean Issa, you two just don't seem like a good couple. Shikamaru chuckled briefly. You can say that again. Temari turned in her chair as she heard a knock on the door and saw Ino enter the office. Ino approached the counter with a card of some sort. Hey, Shikamaru, did you get one of these weird invitations? Shikamaru glanced at the card before turning back to Ino. Yes, you sent them. I know so weird, Rig, Ino exclaimed passionately before hesitating. Wait, you knew? How? Because I know you, Shikamaru said, getting to his feet. If we're going to do this then let's go. Such a drag. Sorry Temari. Ino gave a charming smile. Oh, Temari can come. I made a reservation for her too. That surprised Temari. Oh, you did? Guess Ia better come then. The three departed from the Hokage residence and made their way to the eatery. Temari saw Ino giving them sidelong glances as she and Shikamaru strolled side by side, but if either of them tried to approach her about it, she would turn away and barely contain a girlish chuckle. When they arrived to Yakiniku-Q, Ino announced, "Here we are," and led them inside to their designated location, a single long table in a room designated for private meetings. Temari and Shikamaru were directed to take a seat by Ino, who sat 4 spots in from the outside. Temari gave Shikamaru a curious glance, shrugged, and sat down 2 seats from the end. Beside him at the end of the table was the Sand Kunoichi. As she turned her 2 companions, Ino rested on her elbow. So how long has this been going on? Shikamaru gave a shoulder shrug. I don't know, a few months? Oh, Ino replied, so it started after Temari came to work on the Chunin exams. Shikamaru answered, yeah, what did you expect? The 3 were given water drinks by a server who stopped by. Shikamaru proceeded to take a sip. So what made you finally ask her, or anyone really, out? Ino inquired. As the shock struck, Shikamaru made a valiant effort not to spit out his water. What? We're not dating, Ino, he said once he had finished his glass. Yeah, Temari said. Geez, how can you think that? She then turned her back on Ino in a mocking gesture, but in reality, she was trying to cover up her flushed face. Shoji entered the room at that same moment. Hey there, everybody, thanks for the invite, Ino. Ino sighed in despair. What? You knew too? Shoji sat down between Shikamaru and Ino, laughing. Yes, I did. It had you written all over it. Hey, Ino said. Shikamaru was just telling me that he and Temari aren't dating. Do you believe him? Shoji put a hand on his friend's shoulder and muttered, I wasn't expecting that, but if Shikamaru says it then I believe him. Shikamaru gave his friend a smile, thanks Shoji. Shifting his hand from Shikamaru's shoulder to his own chin, Shoji closed his eyes. Though, there must be something there. After all, you've shared so many meals together. Temari balled her fist, and Shikamaru moaned. Hey, you stupid idiots! She exclaimed. Stop trying to read into something that isn't there. I'm sorry, am I interrupting something? Temari turned to see Sakura, Sasuke, Naruto, and Sai entering the room. Oh, no, Ino said, patting the vacant seat beside her. Come on, Sai, sit next to me. Sai shrugged and complied with the request. Sakura and Sasuke sat down beside Sai. Naruto took a seat across from his colleagues since there were no more seats available on that side of the table. Ino looked across at Sakura. Hey, Shikamaru and Temari are insisting that they aren't dating. Oh, Sakura said, really? Temari bent over to give Sakura a quick glance. Yes, we're not dating, damn it. Sai carefully examined Temari and Shikamaru. Is this an example of this sexual tension I've read so much about? Temari said, what? As she got to her feet, clenching her hand in preparation to beat some common sense into these idiots. Temari's fist was softly covered by Shikamaru's hand. Just sit down. Don't play their game. Temari glanced down at Shikamaru. She forced herself to relax and sit. Fine, she said. I still think you're dating, Naruto muttered to himself. Ready to leap over the table, Temari leapt from her seat once more. What was that? Shikamaru moved swiftly to grab her, putting his arms around her tummy and restraining her from behind. Hey, what did I just say? Oh, I'm sorry, are we interrupting something? Glancing over her shoulder, Temari saw Hinata standing shyly in the doorway, probably having just entered a fascinating scenario. Shikamaru instantly released Temari after turning to face Hinata. He attempted to appear casual by putting his hands in his pockets. Shikamaru scratched the back of his head, his cheeks flushed slightly, and his gaze went to a corner of the room, trying not to look at anyone. No, nothing's happening, come in. Hinata responded, okay, with a completely perplexed expression. Hey, Hinata! Exclaimed Naruto. Naruto slammed his hand on the vacant seat and said, you can sit by me. Hinata blushed and twiddled her fingers as she slid in next to her crush. Oh, all right, she said. Kiba and Shino entered at that precise moment. Akamaru lay down at the end of the table, and they sat down by their teammate. Kiba set his invitation down on the table. Who sent them out, by the way? Ino was the one who sent out the tacky invite cards, Shikamaru retorted. Tacky? Ino cried out. After examining the card, Temari said, it is rather tacky. With disdain, Ino crossed her arms and said, of course you would support him. Why would I back him? Temari remarked, he just happens to be correct. Well, you are his girlfriend, aren't you? Kiba asked, gazing at her with a bewildered expression. Temari chose not to dignify that with a reply, instead hanging her head in defeat. No, we're not dating, Kiba, Shikamaru replied. Just friends. Oh, that's disappointing, Kiba said. A waiter arrived at that very moment, took orders, and turned on the charcoal fire grills at each table. When he was done, he left, and serious talk resumed. Sasuke broke the silence and remarked, so, Naruto, Sakura tells me that you've been off training. What have you been working on? Mostly I've been trying to get better at gathering nature energy, Naruto replied. Sage Jutsu is really useful, but it's still a pain standing still to gather the energy. Really? Kiba remarked, are you becoming even more powerful? It may be hard to believe, Shino replied, but there is always room for improvement, because perfection is unattainable. Following that, the waiter came and went with food and drink orders, causing the majority of the table to break up into smaller conversations. Ino spent most of her time flirting with Sai, who didn't seem to notice. Naruto spoke to most people, hopping from one conversation to another. Choji stayed mostly focused on his meal, and Shino, Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Temari remained silent unless someone else spoke to them, and even then with as few words as possible. Hey, Naruto, Ino said. When will you find a girl? You're the village's most well-liked bachelor. I don't know about that, Naruto replied, shrugging his shoulders. I haven't given it much thought, he remarked, putting a slice of barbecue to his lips. I'm sure you'll find someone, Naruto, Hinata remarked, fidgeting uneasily. Thanks, but I don't know, Naruto said with a giggle. You, however. You'll find someone, Hinata. You're quite attractive, nice, and strong, and you come from a well-known clan. Suddenly, Hinata's cheeks flushed crimson red. Why, you truly think so? Naruto put a palm to her forehead and murmured, yeah, noticing that she was flushed. Are you having a fever? Do you need to be sent to the hospital or something? With a start, Hinata withdrew, her flush deepening, saying, no, I'm fine, and Naruto. With a shrug, Naruto said, all right, if you're sure. You idiot, Kiba cried, she's only like that because. He paused when he noticed Hinata's embarrassment growing. Never mind. Without thinking, Temari looked at Shikamaru, who had silently observed the happenings, and silently thanked whichever gods would listen that she wasn't anything like that. Shikamaru paid for Temari's dinner and Sasuke paid for Sakura's, and the remainder of the meal passed relatively uneventfully until all the food had been consumed and even Choji was satisfied. As usual, Shikamaru led Temari home after they left the restaurant, and as they got closer to the hotel, Temari said, thanks for picking up the bill for me. Hey, it just seemed the proper, courteous thing to do, shrugged Shikamaru. I apologize for the way things transpired back there. Temari smiled and said, it's okay, you'll just have to make it up to me tomorrow. In response, Shikamaru said, HMPH, sounds like a drag, but you got it. With a blank expression on his face, Shikamaru sprang back in shock as Temari moved in to kiss him on the cheek. He then rubbed the area where her lips had touched his flesh. What was that? Meekly, he asked. Temari retorted, it was just my way of saying thanks, but don't think anything by it, adding severely. After gathering his thoughts, Shikamaru grinned and said, wouldn't dream of it. Soon after, they arrived at the hotel, said each other farewell, and parted ways till the next time. Shikamaru was sluggish to wake up this morning, the day following Ino's grand reunion supper. He glanced at his clock, still dazed from sleep. He would need to move quickly if he wanted to go to work on time because it was getting late. Shikamaru thought to himself, this is such a drag, as he hurried into the shower after grabbing some fresh clothes. He usually enjoyed taking lengthy, leisurely, hot baths, but this morning he had no time for that. He was out and about in 5 minutes, half jogging out of the home. He heard his mother's voice calling to him as he got closer to the front door. Shikamaru, aren't you going to have breakfast? Shikamaru halted and looked up at his mother, who was standing in the kitchen. Sorry Mom, I don't have enough time this morning. I need to get to work. Yoshino responded, oh, okay, with a somewhat disappointed expression. Hey, you haven't been coming home for dinner very often, why don't you have a meal with your mother today? Yeah, sure, okay, Shikamaru hurriedly said, eager to start working. I'll see you when I get home. Having said so, Shikamaru hastened from his home to the Hokage residence and arrived at work on schedule. Temari sighed and leaned back in her chair. Even though it was late in the day, working on the Chunin exams was still exhausting. Coordinating the applications from her village alone was turning out to be a significant endeavor. She got to her feet and entered the main area. Kitsuchi was still working diligently, while Darui had already left the office. Temari turned to watch Akira. Temari turned to face the mist Kunoichi, who was uncomfortably near. You waiting for Shikamaru? She asked. Maybe, Temari mumbled clumsily. Akira laughed and stepped back. Maybe. Are you that bad at lying or are you just flustered by the subject matter? Temari stood back and took a time to gather her thoughts. Look, I don't know what you think is going on here, but stop it. Akira said, oh, stop what? I just thought that I'd tell you that Shikamaru has a visitor and will be a while. Some guy with giant eyebrows and a tasteless green jumpsuit. Temari turned away slowly and made her way to Shikamaru's office. Thank you, she replied. She approached the door and leaned against the wall to hear what was being said within. And that is the message that Lord Hokage wanted me to bring to you, stated a voice that was clearly Rock Lee's. Understood, Shikamaru answered. Was there anything else? Yes, Lee replied, it is not related to the message, but I heard that there was a large reunion dinner for the Hidden Leaf 12 last night. Oh, Shikamaru said, pretending to seem interested, you got invited too? Lee didn't seem to notice how fake Shikamaru's response was. Yes, Tenten and I received the invitations. Unfortunately we were both away on a mission and did not return until earlier today. I am sorry that I could not be there. I see, Shikamaru remarked, if that's all? As Lee stood, Temari heard a chair move. That is all. Take care, Shikamaru. He saw Temari resting against the wall as he left the office. Oh, I am sorry to keep you waiting, Temari. Please forgive me. With a shrug, Temari turned the corner toward Shikamaru's office. Don't worry about it. Very good, Lee said. Oh, and before I forget, congratulations to the both of you. Temari came to a complete stop. She turned away from Lee and asked, did Ino tell you about that? No, Lee replied. I heard about it from Guy-sensei. What? Temari turned to look at Lee. Even Guy's heard about that stupid rumor. Lee said, rumor? Then I guess it is not true. No, it isn't, exclaimed Temari. Relax, Temari, stop being such a drag, Shikamaru stated coolly from his desk. Temari responded, fine, and moved to sit in front of Shikamaru's desk. Lee bowed. Please forgive me for the assumption, he murmured. After then, he departed from the offices. Temari looked at Shikamaru with her arms and knees crossed. I swear, does the whole damn village believe that? Probably, Shikamaru replied bluntly. Temari said, HMPH, in any case, you promised me dinner yesterday. At this statement, Shikamaru's eyes grew wide before abruptly closing as he struck his forehead with the palm of his hand. Temari gave him a curious glance. What, don't tell me you're backing out, she exclaimed, jabbing her finger accusingly. Shikamaru gave a headshake. No, I just remembered, I promised my mom that I would come eat with her at home. Temari gave a shrug. All right, then just I'll be having dinner with you and your mother. With a rather perplexed expression, Shikamaru raised his head from his hand and gazed at the sand kunoichi. You want to eat with me? At my house? With my mother? Yeah, Temari replied. Shikamaru shook his head and put his forehead back on the palm of his hand. Yeah, because that's not going to encourage the rumors that you love so much. Temari gave a shoulder shrug. You made too many promises for your own good, but a man has to keep his promises. Shikamaru peered over his hand at her. This is such a drag. Temari shrugged once more. It's your own fault. Shikamaru took Temari on a tour of the area close to the village's outskirts, showing her the recently reconstructed Nara clan complex. There was a straightforward elegance and efficiency in its design, despite the fact that it was neither particularly huge or the most exquisitely adorned district. It was simple to use, even for a novice like her. Shikamaru turned to face one of the houses instead of continuing along the street they were on. Temari did the same. Is that your home? Shikamaru gave a nod. Yeah. Temari added, it's one of larger houses in the neighborhood, in an attempt to break the quiet. Yeah, Shikamaru answered. occurs when you are descended from a clan's main line. When they arrived at the house's entryway, Shikamaru opened the door and entered. Shikamaru exclaimed, "Mom, I'm home," while removing his sandals. Yoshino Nara emerged from around a corner just as Temari was taking off her own shoes, and her eyes grew big as she spotted Temari. "Oh, is this that girlfriend of yours that Ino told me so much about?" Shikamaru smiled. "Yes, I mean that yes, she is that girl. No, she is not my girlfriend." With a finger to her chin, Yoshino marched over to Temari and studied her closely before stepping back and turning to face her son. "Are you sure?" "Why can't I be certain?" Shikamaru sighed and asked. Yoshino sighed back, "Just hoping against hope, I guess." Shikamaru shrugged in response to Temari's inquiring glance as his mother turned away from them. After a short while, they were seated at the family table, enjoying a home-cooked lunch that Yoshino had begun cooking before they arrived. Surprisingly, there was already enough food for 3. Had Shikamaru's mother anticipated his presence? "So, Temari," Yoshino remarked, placing the remaining food on the table. "I've heard a lot about you, some of it from Shikamaru." "Oh," as she began to load her plate, Temari remarked, "I hope they were good things." "Yes," Yoshino answered, taking a seat. "He's always said that you were strong." Temari began, He's also said that you're scary and overbearing," Yoshino added. "Well?" Temari glanced at Shikamaru, who was staring away from the other diners at the table with his arms crossed. "But," Yoshino replied, "that's just his way of saying, good motivator. I find that most Nara men need to be scared or nagged into doing most things." "What are you?" Shikamaru began. "Keep silent," Yoshino scolded her kid. Shikamaru appeared to answer, but all he did was shake his head and smile. "If I may ask," Temari replied, "was Shikamaru's father like that? I never knew him that well." Yoshino's demeanor clouded and she stopped eating at the mention of her husband, and Temari felt guilty for bringing up a relatively recent wound. It had only been 9 months since Shikaku's death during the 4th Great Ninja War. This was also apparent to Shikamaru, who said, "Mom, it's okay if you don't want to talk about it." "No," Yoshino firmly replied, closing her eyes. "I've never met a more lazy man than Shikaku. He was quite uncommitted and hardly took initiative." She opened her eyes and said, "He was one of the smartest men I knew, but he was also overly logical. A superb shinobi who never neglected his responsibilities." "Shikamaru is every inch his father's son," she said, grinning at her kid, "and he'd never abandon his friends." With a bashful smile, Temari looked at Shikamaru while resting her chin on her hand. "Temari, why are you staring at me like that? You must have been staring at him too long." The Sand Kunoichi awoke from her reverie. "What? Why am I staring at you? I had my eyes off of nothing." "Sure," was Shikamaru's deadpan response. Temari had already spoken her goodbyes and thank yous after dinner, and Shikamaru was watching her go from a window in the living room. He could hear his mother carrying the dishes into the kitchen behind him. "What do you think of her, Shikamaru?" he heard from the kitchen. Even though he was aware that his mother wasn't present, Shikamaru shrugged his shoulders and said, "I don't know. She must be a friend." "What kind of friend?" Yoshino said, peeking in from the kitchen. As Temari vanished from view, Shikamaru lay down where he was. "I'm not sure. An ally. I'm happy to have her on my side in combat because she's intelligent and strong. However, she can be a complete drag, noisy, and domineering." "Don't you say that about all of the most important women in your life?" Yoshino asked as she entered the living room and used a rag to dry her hands. "What do you mean?" Shikamaru asked, turning to face his mother. "You say the same things about me, Ino, and Lady Tsunade, for starters," Yoshino replied. Shikamaru trailed off, saying, "Yeah, but if that was true, what about Temari? His mother was, well, his mother, Ino, was like his sister and teammate, and the 5th Hokage had been the one who had promoted him and placed so much trust in him, forcing him to assume greater responsibility and maturity. But where did that leave Temari?" He gazed up at the night sky through the window looming above him. "Wow, these Chunin exams have been great," Ino remarked, reclining in her chair, "and this final match should be good." Sakura pushed forward against the railing in front of them and said, "Yeah, the organizers did a great job." "Come on," smiled Ino. "This is Shikamaru we're talking about here, you should never doubt him." Sakura laughed. "I didn't, this was just beyond what I had already expected." Ino gave a nod. "Ah, I understand what you mean. I think Temari's been a good influence on him." Sakura glanced at her pal over her shoulder. You still think there's something going on between them? Ino gave a shoulder shrug. Yeah. I mean, they still eat out together very often and she's eaten dinner with his mother at least once. Sakura looked across at Ino. How do you know this? Ino grinned. I have my unique ways. Sakura questioned, you've been using your jutsu to spy on them. Hey, Ino said, I have to take care of my boys. Sakura said, I think you're taking it a little too far. Temari was seated in a special box allocated for the exam organizers in the Tobarama Senju Arena, where the final rounds of the Chunin exams were being held. The box for the feudal lords, minor village chiefs, and other significant officials was on the same level as the exam organizers, while above and to their right was the space set aside for the 5 cage. The Hokage was getting ready to deliver his farewell speech after the final matches had concluded. Bored, Temari leaned against the railing and listened to what people were saying. Well, that was rather dull, Darui remarked casually. Nonsense, Kitsuchi said, turning to face Shikamaru. There was a lot of promising talent on the field during these exams and the final rounds seemed popular with the audience. I must say, Shikamaru, that Konohamaru Sarutobi kid was quite impressive, well ahead of the rest of the crop. Shikamaru gave a shrug. He's the third Hokage's grandson and he's received personal training from Naruto, what do you expect? Beside Temari, Akira rested on the rail. This is a fine stadium, isn't it? Well suited to an event such as this. Temari replied. Still this place has a dark history, Akira said. This was the place where Orochimaru started his invasion of the Hidden Leaf, was it not? Temari closed her eyes, recalling a worse time in her life. It was. Ah, Akira replied, and if I remember correctly, you were here when it started. Yes, Temari replied. Must have been terrible, Akira remarked as she turned to face the fence. The third Hokage and fourth Kazekage were both assassinated by Orochimaru, hundreds of people died. And to know that you betrayed the leaf on the manipulations of that man. Still, it wasn't all bad, Temari remarked. My brother changed after that, and he became Kazekage. Our relations with the leaf took a short-term hit but they came out stronger than ever and I met. Temari paused in the middle of her statement to glance over her shoulder at Shikamaru, who was occupied with a discussion with Kitsuchi and Darui. Akira questioned, he's important to you, isn't he? Yeah, Temari said softly, mostly to herself. The Raikage's rough voice yelled, exam organizers, get up here, Temari heard. The 5 quickly put an end to their chatter and headed upstairs to join their box to the cages. I'd like to congratulate you all, the Raikage stated as everyone assembled, for your hard work these past few months. In a limited amount of time you managed to pull off something that had never been done before. Yes, the Tsuchikage replied, these exams were a success well beyond our expectations. The organizers muttered, thank you, to each other. I'm very proud of all of you, the Hokage continued. You all worked very well together. I agree, the Mizukage replied. This was proof that the 5 great nations can continue to work together in times of peace. I look forward to when we host the next exams. I won't have to organize those too, will I? That would be such a drag, Shikamaru replied. Kakashi laughed and grinned. No, I don't think so, Shikamaru. Good, said the Chunin. The Raikage got to his feet. Well, I believe that we are done here for the day. Let us adjourn. At that moment, the exam organizers and the cage started to leave the arena by filing out of the stands. Temari stayed since Gaara was still seated. Shikamaru appeared to be moving slowly as well. The Nara clan head made the decision to leave when they were the last 3. As he strolled, Shikamaru waved lazily and murmured, see you later. Temari joined Gaara as he stood and began to leave after Shikamaru had left. Kankuro joined them as they left the stands. I think that went well, Kankuro remarked. Gaara gave a nod. Yes, I believe so. Alongside his siblings, Kankuro walked in Temari's opposite direction from Gaara. We leaving tomorrow morning? Yes, Gaara replied. You must be happy to be going home, Temari, Kankuro remarked. Yeah, sure, she answered. What, Kankuro replied, you've been away from the village for 6 months and you don't miss it? Temari said, no, I do, but, Buddha what? Kankuro asked. You've grown close to Shikamaru. The words of her younger brother startled Temari out of her reverie. Yeah, I guess so. Kankuro came up to playfully prod his sister with his elbow and said, oh, close in that way? Temari violently shoved him away. Not like that, stop it. Hey, Kankuro remarked with a sigh, it's nothing new. I remember back when we were sent as backup on the Sasuke retrieval mission, you were adamant about being the one who saved him. That was just to get back at him for beating me in the Chunin exams, Temari retorted. Kankuro remarked, grinning mischievously, are you sure that was only part of it? Temari shouted, arg, while crossing her arms and turning her back on her brother. Gaara said, that's enough, it's late, let's get to the hotel. It was getting close to dusk, and Temari was looking forward to a hot shower and a cozy bed. It dawned on her as she went to sleep that night that she had never bid Shikamaru farewell. Standing in the shadows, resting against a building across the street from the hotel where the party from the Hidden Sand was staying, Shikamaru yawned. He had dragged himself out of bed in the middle of the morning to come here on a day when, for the first time in over 6 months, he was allowed to sleep in. Shikamaru heard a door open and looked up to see Kankuro leaving the hotel, followed shortly by his siblings. Kankuro went outdoors and raised his arms in the air. We ready to head out? Gaara moved a short distance away from the door before stopping suddenly and turning to face Shikamaru. Wait. Temari and Kankuro glanced across the street at Shikamaru, who gave them a sluggish wave in return. Kankuro questioned, Hokage requiring you to escort us out of the village? With a cunning, knowing half-smile, Shikamaru began to cross the street to join the Sand siblings. No, it just felt appropriate to escort all the other exam organizers out of the village. Temari inquired, have you already escorted the others? No, Shikamaru said, they left too early for my taste. Temari sneered at this, then shook her head with a gentle smile. Very well, Gaara replied as he started to make his way back to the village gates. Shikamaru and his siblings swiftly trailed behind them. The Leaf Shinobi walked alongside his Sand siblings, not taking the initiative to take the lead because this wasn't a formal event and the Sand siblings had become reasonably familiar with the village from their numerous visits. They arrived at the village gates without much trouble or discussion in a short period of time. Shikamaru stated, well, following their gate guard check-in. I guess this is goodbye. Gaara bowed slightly. Thank you, and thank your Hokage for his hospitality for me. Yeah, I'll see you, Temari replied. Just don't feel too lonely when you eat alone tonight, she said with a smile. Shikamaru chuckled softly. I'll try. And one last thing, Temari said. Do take the Jonin exams, you need to. Not this again, Shikamaru answered. Temari began, listen, I already told. Though he had been thinking about it for some time, Shikamaru dismissively waved his hand and said, fine, I'll take the stupid exams. Wait, seriously? Temari asked, staring back in shock. Yes, shrugged Shikamaru, you've persuaded me, are you happy? Temari grinned and said, only if you pass. With a smile in return, Shikamaru said, then I'll try that, troublesome as it is. After that, they stood there grinning and awkwardly staring at each other for what seemed like several minutes. Right, well, goodbye, Temari stumbled. Yeah, bye, Shikamaru answered. Temari turned away and began to leave the village after giving it one final glance. Her brothers turned and followed her silently. Shikamaru stood and observed them for a while before leaving the gates himself, returning to his house in the hopes of resting. With the hidden leaf out of sight and a 3-day journey to the Hidden Sand ahead of them, Temari and her brothers strolled through the Land of Fire's forest at a moderate pace that was neither slow nor hurried. As is customary on these excursions, the three of them were largely silent, and Temari thought about the past 6 months and her upcoming return to her hometown. Want to work in the leaf for a longer period of time? Gaara interrupted Temari's reverie with a question. Perplexed, Temari looked at her brother and said, well, maybe. You ask, but why? Gaara said, I just thought you might want to, but her youngest brother wasn't going to mention it just yet, even though the look he gave out of the corner of his eyes suggested there was more to it. After giving it some thought, Temari decided that while she would welcome the opportunity to return to Shikamaru, it had been 6 months since she had last seen her home, and her first thought was going back to the Hidden Sand. Ask me later, Temari said at last. I might be interested. Very well, Gaara answered, returning his focus to the lengthy path leading back to the Hidden Sand. When Shikamaru opened one eye and looked at his clock, he saw that it was noon, the latest he had been able to sleep in months. His face was lit by the dim light coming through the curtains, and after giving it some thought, he decided it would be better to go outside and observe the clouds. But he wasn't in a rush to do that. Instead, he took his time doing everything, even having a shower and getting dressed. Eventually, Shikamaru was able to drag himself toward the front door. You coming home for dinner tonight, Shikamaru? his mother called out to him as he walked by the living room. No, I'll be eating with Temari and maybe a few other people, Shikamaru replied while continuing to go. Is Temari still in the village? Yoshino inquired. When Shikamaru realized what he had just said, he stopped. No, she left yesterday morning. Why had he said that? Shikamaru turned to face his mother, who gave him a knowing smile that normally irritated him. With a renewed sense of urgency, he started walking again, hoping that some cloud watching might help him decompress. Are you certain you can't accompany me to the exams, Ino? Standing outside the Hokage residence, where the Jonin exams were scheduled to start in less than an hour, Sakura asked her best friend. Yeah, I'm sure, Ino answered. With a sad sigh, Sakura asked, is anyone else in our class taking it? Nope, was Ino's straightforward response. How about Shino? Sakura asked, searching for anything, I'm sure he's ready. The tone of her friend's desperation made Ino giggle. Probably is, but apparently he's thinking about retiring from active duty and becoming an academy instructor. Really? Sakura responded, surprised. Okay. How about Kiba? He must be eager to take these tests. You'd think so, but apparently he's sitting this one out, Ino chuckled once again. I've heard that Akamaru hasn't been feeling well for a few weeks. Sakura answered, oh, I'm sad to hear that. How about Lee, Tenten, or perhaps Hinata? No, Ino shook her head. There are rumors that Lee had planned to take the examinations but decided against it after losing a wager or something. Sakura paused suddenly, perplexed. What, due to a wager? Don't ask me, Ino said, shrugging her shoulders. In any case, Tenten is currently assisting him with whatever he is doing, and Hinata is simply not participating. Sakura inhaled deeply. All right. We also know that your teammates aren't accepting it. Yes, Ino said. Shikamaru actually never told me whether he was going to do it or not, and Shoji told me as much. You know him, though, and he won't take action if it's not necessary. Yeah, you're right, Sakura replied. I don't even know what I'm so worried about. She turned away from Ino and started heading in the direction of the Hokage residence, waving back at her friend and wishing herself success. Unlike the Chunin exams, the admissions process was less formal and bureaucratic, requiring only a verbal declaration of intent to take the exams before entering the Jonin briefing room, where the Hokage would explain the first portion of the exams to the applicants. Additionally, fewer individuals took these tests than the Chunin counterpart. This was to be expected as Jonin are meant to be the best of the best. If everyone applied to be one, that wouldn't be the case. Only the talented, the aspirational, and the overconfident took these tests. Sakura looked around for faces she recognized, and she saw that many of the candidates were the brightest young Chunin in the town, with the exception of course, almost every member of the Hidden Leaf 12. Sakura was the only one of her peers taking these exams, which was very surprising given that their generation had been touted as one of the most promising ever. All one had to do was glance across the room to realize that. Shikamaru. Sakura approached him with a completely shocked expression on her face and exclaimed when she spotted him lying on some chairs in the corner. Before the tests began, the man in question had been trying to get some sleep. He opened them slowly, glanced at Sakura idly, and then closed them again. Oh, hey. I assume you're also taking the tests. Sakura said, Ino told me that you weren't going to be here, with a tone of astonishment. After giving her a quick glance, Shikamaru closed his eyes once more and said, I don't remember telling Ino anything like that. Oh, right, Sakura replied. She mentioned that you hadn't shared anything with her, we simply assumed, you know. With his back to Sakura, Shikamaru said, well, that is what happens when you do that. Sakura wondered, raising an eyebrow. So why are you taking these exams? A shrug was the reaction. I just figured it was time. With a sly smile, Sakura said, did Temari assist you with that? No. Shikamaru's eyes darted frantically back and forth before he sat up and looked at Sakura. Maybe. Sakura laughed. Well, at least I've got some gossip to share with Ino, if nothing else. With a frustrated slap on his forehead, Shikamaru said, great, another troublesome thing that I have to deal with. Oh come on, Shikamaru, Sakura replied. I think it's kind of sweet. Yeah, sure, whatever, Shikamaru answered. What a drag, he muttered to himself. Sakura let out a sigh just before Kakashi interrupted the talk by entering the room and beginning to brief the applicants on the examinations. After returning from the Hidden Leaf a few months ago, Temari sat in her bedroom with the door open, polishing her fan. The first few weeks had been wonderful, seeing old friends, going to her favorite restaurants that she had been missing, and generally settling back into her desert home. It helped that Gaara assigned her only light duties for a few weeks after they returned, but now she felt like something was missing. "Are you thinking about something?" Kankuro inquired, drawing Temari's attention to the fact that he had been standing at the doorway for an unknown amount of time. "What makes you say that?" Temari asked, carrying on with her polishing. Kankuro replied, "You've been polishing that fan for the past 30 minutes. Have you been observing me?" Temari asked, not taking her eyes off her task. "Not all the time," Kankuro said. "I've seen you doing it a few times when I've passed. You didn't even realize that I had been standing here for 5 minutes. Does this have a purpose?" Angry, Temari questioned. "Oh, nothing," Kankuro remarked idly. "You just seem agitated, or perhaps anxious is a better word. Are you preoccupied? What are your thoughts?" "I'm not at the source, Kankuro," Temari said, stopping her polishing and forcefully slamming her fan to the ground. "No, you're not," he answered. "Now, tell me about yourself. You've been behaving in this manner for weeks." Temari said, "Nothing," and after a bit, Kankuro remained. "The Hidden Leaf's Jonin examinations are starting right about now, aren't they?" After giving it some thought, Kankuro said, "Yeah, I think they are, now that you mention it." Normally, he didn't keep track of anything remotely political, he left it to his siblings. "Will they let us know who passes?" Temari inquired. She didn't know why she asked, but she knew the answer, which Kankuro gave her right away. "Well, no, as far as I could find, communities are not obliged to disclose to foreign countries the number or identity of their joinin. Why do you want to know?" "Just curious," Temari replied. Concerning Shikamaru, Kankuro surmised precisely what she was interested in. Temari didn't want to acknowledge that, but she realized she couldn't truly discuss it with her brother, so she remained silent. "I'm sure that he'll be fine," Kankuro said, interpreting the silence as a yes. "He will pass if he takes it. He's a fantastic ninja and might have been a Jonin long ago." "Yeah," Temari murmured, partly to herself. This was the response she had thought of on several occasions, but she didn't think it would ease her uneasy feelings, a tightness in her chest that persisted. Temari waited for her brother to get back from a council meeting while sitting in his office. The world had just been fighting for survival for a week when the moon crashed into Earth. Everyone exhaled together as Naruto Uzumaki's actions saved them once more. Temari, however, was still worried and wanted to discuss them with her brother. Entering the room, the young Kazekage took a seat at his desk. "Yes, Temari?" Temari inquired. "Anything interesting happen in the meeting?" "No," Gaara said, retrieving some documents from a desk drawer. Temari said, "There was something I wanted to discuss with you," following a little pause. "I gathered as much," Gaara answered. Temari squirmed uneasily in her chair. She waited to observe her brother's response before saying, "We need to be better prepared for future crisis." No one was present. "We need to improve our ability to coordinate with other nations. Twice now in the past 3 years we've had international crises that have left the 5 great nations scrambling. Next time we need to be able to form plans quicker." Gaara kept his eyes on his paperwork. "What do you suggest?" Temari straightened her back, getting ready to present her strategy. Every important non-shinobi nation has ambassadors in the courts of all the other important non-shinobi nations to represent their interests. It's time for the 5 great nations to finally do the same. Though he remained silent, Gaara looked up from his papers and clearly focused all of his attention on Temari. Temari went on. "With ambassadors in all the other great nations we can assure our interests are addressed more easily and quickly. We can also coordinate responses to international crisis more quickly and easily, and it can help maintain friendly relations." "I know," the Kazekage answered. "I've already thought of that." "You have?" Temari said, startled. "Yes," Gaara replied, "for all the reasons you just stated. I was just deciding who to send. Since you're interested, you'll be our ambassador to the village hidden in the leaves. I'll arrange things with the Hokage and send you out as soon as possible." Temari got up and nodded. "Yes sir," she bowed. As she turned to leave, Gaara remarked, "Tell Shikamaru, hello, for me when you see him." Temari was shocked to learn that Gaara was making fun of her. Shikamaru was startled awake by a persistent knock on the door. He initially believed it to be at his bedroom door, but he soon discovered it was at the front. Shikamaru yelled, "Mom," as the knocking continued. He had to presume she was gone from the house as there was no response. Going shopping or anything. Shikamaru decided he would have to get up and answer the knock as it persisted. Shikamaru cried sheepishly, "Hold on, I'm coming," as he rolled out of bed. The knocking persisted as he got up and stabilized himself, saying, I was hoping to enjoy my vacation after that nonsense with the damned moon falling out the damned sky. All right, I'm coming," he exclaimed as he arrived at the stairway, and the knocking stopped. Shikamaru finally arrived at the door and opened it. "Listen, I don't care what you're selling, we don't Temari?" The Sand Kunoichi glanced up and down at Shikamaru. "Did you just get up?" "Yes," Shikamaru answered. "It's noon," Temari said. "Huh," Shikamaru remarked. "I was hoping for later. Anyways, why are you here?" Temari said, "I've been made the Sand's new ambassador to the Hidden Leaf," as she entered past Shikamaru. Shikamaru responded, "Okay," as he took in this new knowledge. "That still doesn't explain why you're here at my house." Even though it wasn't the case, Temari began aimlessly scanning the house as though she was there for the first time. "Part of my job is to understand the inner workings of leaf politics, including clans. I'm starting with yours." "Why?" inquired Shikamaru, completely perplexed. "Our complex is on the furthest outskirts of the village and there are several more powerful families, like the Hyuga, for instance." Temari questioned, "You telling me how to do my job?" No," Shikamaru replied, choosing to ignore the situation. Temari grinned and said, "Okay, start telling me about the Nara clan. Maybe over lunch." With a nod, Shikamaru shut the entrance door. He hurried off to make some food. He wasn't much of a cook, so nothing too substantial. He heard footsteps behind him as he moved around the kitchen as if it were unfamiliar, and he turned to see Temari joining him. "You really are hopeless," she remarked, grinning. "Come on, I'll help you." She thus assisted Shikamaru in making their fast lunch, so Temari cooked everything while he followed her instructions. They discussed the Nara clan, their relationships with other families, and their standing in the community while they worked. As the work progressed, eventually came to an end, and they sat down to eat at the dinner table. The discourse became longer and farther away from the topic of the Nara clan, encompassing every aspect of Hidden Leaf politics. "So," Temari asked, taking a sip of her tea, "is Naruto still the most eligible bachelor in the Hidden Leaf?" Perplexed, Shikamaru sipped his water while glancing at the newly appointed envoy. He laughed and put down his drink, saying, "Well now, we've left the realm of politics entirely." With a hint of distaste mixed with affection, he stated, "No, Naruto is taken. He and Hinata have been sickeningly sweet on each other ever since the moon incident, and very publicly." Temari raised her feet and reclined on her chair. So who has taken his place?" After giving it some thought, Shikamaru simply shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know." Temari said, come one," and leaned toward Shikamaru. She added suggestively, "Is it you they're after?" Shikamaru gave a headshake. "Whatever. Such a drag, all of it, really." Temari is returning once more. "I agree." Startled, Shikamaru said, "What?" "Having people following you around and ogling you would be a drag," she said. Yeah," replied Shikamaru. Temari got up and stretched after a few period of stillness. "All right, I'd like to see some of these deer herds of yours." "Really?" asked Shikamaru. "You've already been here for hours, don't you have other places to tour?" Temari kept stretching. They can wait. Besides, I like it here." "Oh," said Shikamaru, "I'm glad you like it here, then." Temari began to blush and stopped performing her tiny stretches. Yuha, thanks." Shikamaru's cheeks turned red when he saw the Sand Kunoichis. "Yeah. Wella, no problem." Temari straightened her posture and cleared her throat. "So, where are those deer of yours?" "Just head out back," Shikamaru replied. Shikamaru took a moment to give himself a forehead smack for his foolish remarks after Temari had left the room. Then he stood up and made his way to the backyard. When he got there, Temari was standing in the center of the clearing, surveying his surroundings. She screamed at him, "Where are these so-called deer?" Shikamaru gestured toward the forest at the yard's edge. "They're in that forest. We own this land for miles in that direction, the deer roam around in there." Temari answered, "All right," before heading into the wilderness. "Hey!" shouted Shikamaru. Could you at least wait for me?" As Temari began her journey through the Nara woodland, she clung to the branches. Finding some deer wasn't really important to her. However, it was pleasant to spend time with Shikamaru for the first time in a long time, and this was just as good an excuse as any to stay with him. She heard her host yelling from behind, but she ignored him because she had just seen a large male deer with a striking pair of horns. She felt a touch on her shoulder as she was going to get close to it. "I'd recommend against that," Shikamaru replied. "They tend to act aggressive with people outside our clan." Temari was very conscious of his hand on her shoulder as he was speaking. She wasn't really opposed to it. Then he realized what he was doing and abruptly withdrew. Temari condemned him in silence. Sorry, he blurted out. She nearly said, don't be, but refrained. Slowly, Shikamaru moved toward the beast. The deer moved to greet him as he approached and raised its head, which Shikamaru started petting. He motioned for Temari to follow him after a little pause. She followed Shikamaru's lead and moved gently. He gave her the most critical glance she had seen in a long time as she was standing close to the deer. Then he turned his head to face her, and his eyes softened. Temari hesitated for a moment before responding. Oh, she started caressing the animal. Shikamaru remarked, I guess he likes you. The deer then gave Temari a loving face nuzzle. Oh, okay, big fella, I like you too. At this, Shikamaru chuckled quietly. At this rate you can become an honorary member of the clan. Temari said, I think I may like that, without giving it any thought. Then she understood what she had said and regretted it. She turned to face Shikamaru, whose expression was essentially the same. The deer decided it was time to leave and left the two alone during the awkward stillness that ensued. Shikamaru gave an exaggerated clearing of his throat. Well, I think we're done here. You shoulda probably go. Temari hesitated for a time before responding, yeah. The two went back to the house in silence, making every effort and frequently failing not to stare at one another. Temari's belongings were quickly gathered, and Shikamaru led her to the front door. All right. See ya, Shikamaru stammered. Yeah, Temari answered. She quickly turned around and headed out onto the street in the direction of the new hidden sand embassy, saying, I'll see you. Whenever. Temari felt as though she had been dancing on a cliff in the back of her mind, a slow dance that drew her both toward and away from the edge. She had cowered before the jump today, retreating in terror as she stood on the edge and gazed down at the grandeur and beauty below. She wished she had jumped. Lying on the couch in the living room, Shikamaru lost himself in the events of the day. Why did he feel as though there were gaps in his life? The centerpiece that would have made everything make sense seemed to have slipped out of his palm, as if it were all simply a large puzzle. He knew he would see Temari again. And why was she so crucial? The sound of the front door opening made him sit up. Mom? With a spring in her step, Yoshino remarked, Oh, hey, as she entered the house. I ran into Temari, of all people, at the market today. Shikamaru was interested in that. Did you? Yes, Yoshino said as he leaned against the living room doorway. As if they weren't on a tour, she added, she told me about her new position and that she was touring the major clans today. I figured I'd visit some old friends and let you two deal with it without me. Shikamaru replied, yeah, Mom, Yoshino responded, No, I don't want to know the details, and walked out of the room. Once more, it seemed as though she was discussing something more than a straightforward tour. What was she discussing? Did she really believe that they? Pulling himself up, Shikamaru yelled for his mother and peered over the back of the couch. Rather, he thought to himself, no, that couldn't possibly be it. Not at all. He recalled all the foolish gossip that Ino had disseminated prior to the Chunin exams. Were they truly so foolish? Did they all notice something that neither of them could? Shikamaru groaned. This is such a drag. With the lights off, Temari sat in her new office. The Sands' new embassy in the Hidden Leaf has a good view of the Hokage residence and the main square in front of it. She had been appointed ambassador to the Hidden Leaf for a month, and she was still getting used to her new position. She hadn't seen Shikamaru in a few weeks as well. She had actually been making every effort to stay away from the Nara clan head. She had been looking forward to their next chat ever since their last meeting ended so poorly. She feared it, or at least felt something akin to terror, even though she had no idea what she expected from it, what she would say, or what he would say. Fear of what she was unable to express. Temari turned in her chair to face the door as she heard a knock. Come in. Slowly, the door opened and Ino Yamanaka entered with a little pile of papers. The Chunin put the documents on Temari's desk and said, I've brought in some paperwork from the Hokage. He feels that the Sand might have an interest in some of this and he would like your opinion on them. Temari turned back to the window and said, Thank you, without glancing at the papers. Something wrong, Temari? Inquired Ino. Nothing, Temari blurted out. Why are you even here? You're not one of the Hokage's usual messengers. I volunteered, Ino answered. I wanted to talk to you. Well, you've talked, so go, Temari remarked icily. Oh, come on, Ino murmured as she sat on Temari's desk, picking up different items and casually examining them. Don't be like that. Besides, we have something of mutual interest. Temari questioned, that being? Shikamaru Nara, Ino said. Temari took a long breath through her nostrils. She responded, not interested, as the pressure in her chest increased. It was untrue. I'm just confused by something, Ino remarked. When you came back to the village I was expecting you and Shikamaru to continue where you left up, but you seem to be avoiding each other. Temari questioned, and how would you know that? Ino added, I have my ways, in a voice that tried too hard to sound enigmatic. Sure you do, Temari said mockingly. Ino let out a frustrated groan. She took Temari's chair and spun it around, saying, listen, I'm just going to get to the heart of things here. You and Shikamaru need to go out together. What? Cried Temari. Shut up, you don't know anything, she continued in a defensive manner. With a dramatic sigh, Ino remarked, I don't know what is about you two, but you keep pushing it right to the point making things happen, but never actually do. Temari shouted, shut up, as she got to her feet and slammed her palms on her desk. Get out. With a resigned sigh, Ino left the desk and made her way to the door. Fine, but don't say I didn't try to help you. Temari tried to relax herself by taking a deep breath as Ino shut the door behind her. She examined documents that Ino had brought. There were only around 6 cases that may potentially implicate the Sand. Her attention was drawn to the final case. Some rogue ninja from the Sand, huh? She asked, putting the paperwork aside before turning back to the window. Seated atop his roof, Shikamaru gazed up at the passing clouds. It distracted him from Temari and everything else. That was the most crucial aspect. Shikamaru. When the Nara clan head looked down, he saw Choji standing in front of the house, eagerly waving at him. Shikamaru made a more subdued gesture in reply. The building trembled a little as Choji jumped to the roof and landed by his best friend. What's up, Shikamaru? Shikamaru started to reply, but a shout from within the house cut him off. Shikamaru, what the hell are you doing up there? His mother yelled. Oh, sorry Mrs. Nara, Choji said, it was just me. Yoshino screamed back, Choji? Oh, okay. Shikamaru assumed that was it after a brief silence, but his mother then called out. Is Temari is with you? What? Screamed Shikamaru. Mom, no, I'm afraid not, Choji replied. I'm here to talk about that, actually. What? Cried Shikamaru once more. Choji. Yoshino screamed back, oh, good luck with it, then. Shikamaru glanced up at his closest pal. Choji, I don't want to talk about her. Sure you do, Choji remarked, sitting beside his pal. Even if you don't, you need to. Shikamaru remarked, ah, this is such a drag, as he reclined. What do you know anyway? Shikamaru, I'm your best friend, Choji replied, in some ways, I know you better than you know yourself. Shikamaru questioned, and this is one of those ways? Apparently, Choji answered. Uh-huh. Choji let out a deep sigh. Listen, Shikamaru. A loud rustling sound came from behind the house, interrupting Choji. Shikamaru turned to see and said out loud, what was that? It's one of our deer, it's injured, he exclaimed as he sprung from their perch and sprinted to the animal's side. Shikamaru remarked, this was done by a shinobi, as Choji got closer. You go and inform the Hokage and I'll go in and investigate. You got it, Shikamaru, Choji said, leaving to follow instructions as Shikamaru cautiously made his way into the jungle. Temari heard someone running as she was sitting calmly in her office. She turned to find Ino standing in the doorway, gasping, as the door suddenly sprang open. Temari, Ino murmured in between heaving gasps, there was an incident. Temari questioned, what kind of incident? A rogue sand ninja has been apprehended on Nara land. Ino replied after taking a deep breath. It's a Shikamaru Heya saw at the hospital, she said, sounding concerned. What? Cried Temari. Temari's mind raced through a number of situations before the worst one took hold of her. She quickly made her way to the hospital without giving it another thought. She arrived at the hospital in a matter of seconds, storming through the doors and sprinting to the front desk. Shikamaru Nara. Temari insisted. The front desk employee gave Temari a perplexed glance in return. The Sand Kunoichi could only wonder why it was taking so long. Oh, the nurse exclaimed when she realized what had happened. He's in room 113, Buddha. Temari didn't wait for an answer, nor did she give one. She started walking down the corridor once more, around the bend, and arrived at room 113. She tore open the door and ran inside, where she saw Shikamaru and gave him a hard hug while crying. Shikamaru. Are you okay? She exclaimed, not realizing that he was standing there unharmed. After overcoming his initial shock, Shikamaru returned the favor. Sakura was standing across the room, her mouth hanging open, utterly shocked by the unexpected display of devotion. Yeah, I'm a fine. She said, what? Excuse-me. Temari let go of Shikamaru as soon as she realized what was going on. So, she said, trying to appear respectable by clearing her throat. Yuha, what happened here? Sakura said, well, you see, this is a rogue ninja from the hidden sand. Temari nodded briefly to indicate that she understood, feeling the shame cause her cheeks to flush. With his own cheeks getting redder by the second, Shikamaru edged away from her, trying to focus on the area of the room that was farthest away from Temari. Sakura went on, you know what? Shikamaru can explain this better than I can, she blurted out. What? Screamed Shikamaru. Yeah, go ahead, Sakura replied. Sure, Shikamaru answered. You see, there was a disturbance in our forests. You know them, right? Of course you do. What am I saying? He breathed in deeply. When I found him he was unconscious and surrounded by Dira and Sakura responded, okay, before heading out into the hallway and shutting the door behind you. I'm just going to step outside and leave you two alone. When they were by themselves, Shikamaru inquired, what was that? I don't know, Temari replied, taking a big breath before turning to face the floor. I just heard that you were at the hospital and I just thought about you being hurt and I couldn't stand it. There was nothing to be worried about, Shikamaru comforted her, taking her by the chin and turning her to face him so he could see it. Temari gave a nod. She was aware that there weren't many shinobi who could defeat Shikamaru in combat, but she hadn't given it much thought. Now she was not going to think. I love you, Shikamaru Nara, she blurted out. For years and years now, even if I didn't realize it. I never want to lose you and I want to be with you. Wow, Shikamaru remarked. The Sand Kunoichi pressed her lips on his before he could finish, giving him a thorough, passionate kiss. Temari gave this moment, her whole attention. Where am I? The last thing I remember is those damn deer and then. What the heck? What the hell is going on? Get me out of here, was the rogue ninja's voice, which she vaguely heard waking up. After shutting the door, Sakura inhaled deeply. She looked up to see Ino approaching her with a pleased expression on her face. As she got closer, Ino questioned, did Temari just go in there? Yeah, Sakura replied, running as if some sort of demon was chasing her. Was this your doing? Ino grinned broadly and with pride. Yes. A fine bit of acting on my part, I might say. Sakura nodded and tried to listen in by putting her ear to the door. I wonder if they're finally going to say something. Confess. You know they will, Ino remarked. The sound of shouting from within the room cut her off as she continued. The only people who haven't seen it are them and. Sakura quickly flung open the door and dashed inside, followed by Ino. They witnessed the rogue ninja strapped to the bed, crying and demanding to be released, and Shikamaru and Temari engaging in some extremely passionate kissing. Perplexed by the entire situation, the two medical ninjas simply stood there. When Shikamaru noticed Ino and Sakura, he blushed and moved away from Temari, breaking the kiss. What? Exclaimed the renegade ninja. Is it normal to have make-out sessions in hospital rooms around here? Temari looked at the two ninjas in medicine. Just send him back to the hidden sand, she added hurriedly, we'll take care of him. She swiftly left the room. Shikamaru uneasily glanced around the room at everyone else. Then, without saying anything, he followed Temari out. Ino gave Sakura a smile. I'd say it worked pretty well. Will you just get me out of here? Exclaimed the renegade ninja. Oh, right. Sakura said. Shikamaru shouted, Temari, as he caught up to her outside the hospital. Wait, I want to talk about what happened in there. I know, Temari replied, it was stupid. We're from different villages, there's no way that we could work together. It would be like walking a tightrope all of our lives. Just ignore it, the delusions of a girl who should have learned to be a woman by now. No, Shikamaru murmured, taking her arm. He let go and said, I love you too. I don't know what it is, but you complete me. And I want to make it work out, drag that it may be. Besides, sand and leaf relations are better than they've ever been, and once Naruto takes over they'll only get stronger. We'll make this work. Okay, then, Temari replied. Well, I have some work to do, but, do want to get some dinner afterwards? Shikamaru gave her a smile. More than ever before, this time, it really will be a date. Shikamaru was sitting in a restaurant, clearly irritated. Although it would be unreasonable to criticize the corporation that was supposed to be there, one could argue that the company was at fault. Temari, seated across the table from him, was experiencing similar emotions. The two had decided to start dating for a month, but in reality, they were just dating in a narrow sense. However, it wasn't totally their own decision. As their hectic schedules allowed, they had been going on dates at least once a week, whether it was for dinner or a stroll in a park. Their hectic schedules weren't the only factor limiting their interactions. Temari rearranged the few food bits that were still on her plate. She raised a bite to her lips and inquired, "She's still watching?" Shikamaru said, "Yeah," as he peered out the window. He sensed that Ino was watching them from somewhere on the other side. It might have been one of her jutsu rather than her. Because of the way she had been honing her Yamanaka secret techniques, she might not even be observing them directly, but she could use an intermediary to check on them whenever she wanted. "I don't think anyone else has joined her this time, at least." "I think you're right," Temari remarked. The remnants of her meal were shoved from her. "I mean, seriously, they're all at least Chunin level, Jonin or even beyond. At the very least they can spy on us without us figuring it out so quickly every time. It's not like it's an actual mission," Shikamaru thought to himself. He and Temari had observed almost all of their pals in the Leaf Village observing them from the shadows at some point. Ino was only the most frequent offender. They're probably not being as careful as they could be. It had barely passed Shikamaru's or Temari's notice that even cage-level ninja like Naruto and those with cage-level duties like Kakashi had occasionally joined in. They had only sensed them at those moments. They both knew that all of their pals were skilled at tracking, scouting, and infiltration, and that they could conceal their presence to some extent. Even though they had every reason to think they weren't being monitored, that simply made them more paranoid. The new couple got up and went to pay their bill at the counter. Temari got there before Shikamaru could pay for it. They laughed and grinned at their little game, but it was a touch hollow since they could sense the watchful presence shifting outside. It was like a tingling in the back of their heads, an unexplainable sixth sense. With the trepidation of a kid approaching his first girl, Shikamaru said, "I don't suppose that you'd like to come over, or something." A shudder went down Temari's spine in response, barely noticeable to anyone but him. She looked out the window above their table and said, "No, I don't think so." Shikamaru understood and felt the same way, asking only because it seemed so strange for them to be so reluctant to do so, and since it's the kind of thing he's expected to do. They were anxious to meet someplace other than in public since they were aware that they may be observed at any time, even if the observers had good intentions. Both of them headed home by themselves. Bored beyond belief, Shikamaru sat in his office in the Hokage residence. He couldn't force himself to do much, not because there wasn't much to do, there was always something to do when you worked for the Hokage. He caught a glimpse of a bird perched on a tree branch outside his office window as he peered out the window. Shikamaru spat, "Tisk," and turned his back on the scene. Then he inhaled deeply. "Know what, may not even be Ino," he reasoned, "could just be one of any number of birds." Glancing back over his shoulder, he saw that the bird was still sitting on its limb, grooming its feathers and apparently going about its own business. At last, Shikamaru made the decision to simply go for a short willia, possibly to one of the break rooms. He could get something to eat and distract himself from his predicament. More significantly, there were no windows. As he left his office, the young Jonin heard, "Another break, Shikamaru." He turned and saw Shizune passing by with files and boxes in her arm. She shifted the weight in her arms and groaned, "Seem to be taking a lot lately." "Yeah," was Shikamaru's hazy response. "I mean, Noah, I've just been distracted lately with this whole thing." "Ah," Shizune said as she went back on her way. "Well, you two are the hottest new item since. Well, a Naruto and Hinata, I suppose." "Yeah," replied Shikamaru. He stood there for a while, gazing at his office door. He hesitated for a while before reaching for the handle, opening it, and returning to the room. He didn't even consider it, let alone return to his chair. Rather, he simply stood in the doorway and gazed out the window. The bird remained on its perch. It paused its preening to gaze up at Shikamaru. More than anything, the Jonin was irritated and shook his head. Then he glanced out the window again and saw the sand embassy straight beyond the bird. He said, "Ah, what a ow," as his office door opened behind him, striking him in the back. "Eh, Shikamaru," Shoji said as he entered the room, what are you doing just standing in the doorway?" "Nothing," Shikamaru said, massaging his back before entering the room. "Now, what do you want?" "Oh, nothing," Akamichi replied. "I just thought you ought to know that Naruto's back from his big secret mission. I was just on the way to tell Kakashi-sensei." "Oh, okay," said Shikamaru. He abruptly said, "Wait," as his eyes widened in recognition. "Would you happen to know where he is right now?" "Hanging out at the Great Stone Faces, if I'm not mistaken," Shoji responded. Shikamaru said, "Thanks," as he passed his friend and left the office. The third Hokage's massive stone face loomed over Shikamaru as he ascended to the roof. He shouted, "Hey, Naruto, you up here?" The sound of Shikamaru's speech was followed by a brief period of quiet. "Shikamaru? That you?" The blonde ninja's head protruded from the plateau atop the monument, gazing down at Shikamaru as Naruto's voice responded. He sprang and landed in front of the Nara. Naruto said, "Needed something, Shikamaru?" "Nothing really important," Shikamaru replied. "It's just..." He hesitated, highlighting the intimate nature of his query for the first time. Nervously, he scratched the back of his skull. Naruto leaned forward to ask Shikamaru, "Just what?" "Well, Oh, this is such a drag," Shikamaru continued, stuttering. "Okay. When you and Hinata started dating you guys so well, I'm sure you drew a lot of attention and, Look, what I really want to know is, how did you guys deal with it?" Naruto processed the question and said, His eyes brightened as he began about his lover. "Well, we used to get a lot of people snooping around us. To be honest, I didn't really know what to do about them. But Hinata, oh, you should have seen her," he exclaimed. "Once, we were trying to get some alone time, we could, you know." The finest ninja in the world used overt gestures to try and make his point. "Yeah, just go on, Naruto," Shikamaru remarked impatiently. "Okay," was Naruto's defensive response. "Anyway, some guy was following us, had a camera, so I guess he was trying to sneak a picture. Hinata sensed him and before I knew what she'd hit him with one of those air palm attacks and sent him flying 30 feet through the air. He mimicked the arc of an object in flight with his arms above his head, his voice and mannerisms full of enthusiasm and clear admiration for his beloved. Anyway, Naruto said, after that people stopped bothering us as much, and when they did she'd just scare them straight. I mean, Hinata might seem all sweet and nice and stuff, but she can be really scary when she wants to be." "I know," Shikamaru laughed in response. From the plateau came a faint call, "Naruto?" Just a minute, honey," Naruto yelled back, chuckling to himself. Shikamaru put his palm to his face and murmured, "Huh? Oh damn it." He shook his head in frustration at himself and said, "Here I am asking you about. I'm sorry, man." Naruto grinned and said, "Hey, don't worry, Shikamaru," before leaping back to the top of the statue. Shikamaru turned away, leaving the lovers to meet together. The bird has vanished. Standing in front of the Hokage residence, Shikamaru gazed up at the tree outside his office window. His attention was nearly entirely concentrated on the Sand Embassy as he glanced back down across the street. The young genin staring at him in silence, the people moving around, and the receptionist attempting to greet him into the embassy all escaped his sight. He soon found himself at Temari's office door. Temari said, "Shikamaru, what are you doing here?" as the Leaf Shinobi unexpectedly entered her office. With a smoothness that didn't fit his mood, Shikamaru responded, "Oh, nothing. I was just wondering if you'd like to go to the park, perhaps?" Except for a few, like the person observing him, it would have tricked everyone. Temari said, "Sure," with a well-practiced shrug that would have tricked anyone who didn't know her like Shikamaru. She got up and walked out of the embassy with Shikamaru. They headed to one of the village's many parks, where Shikamaru guided his fiancée copyrightee to a bench and took a seat. Temari questioned, "So what is this about?" "Nothing," Shikamaru answered. "I have a plan." Temari grinned. "Oh, for what? I'm dying to see." Shikamaru caught a glimpse of a bird landing in a neighboring tree out of the corner of his eye. "You'll see," he said, flashing a fake nonchalant smile. "Just talk to me. Or at least look like it." "Okay." Temari chuckled aloud. She put her head on his shoulder as if he had just told her the best joke she had ever heard, and that escalated into a full-fledged fit of laughter. A second bird joined the first, and Shikamaru grinned at her performance. A third quickly joined it. He carefully navigated the shadow pull jutsu signs while keeping his hands in his lap. From beneath the bench, a tendril of shadow crept up the tree. He positioned this shadow carefully and readied his blow. "Now," said Shikamaru. The shadow leapt to its feet and encircled the three birds in a way that was just secure enough to keep them from fleeing without endangering them. He turned to face the birds. Two were in a panic, just like any bird would be if a shadow suddenly snatched it. The third just gave Shikamaru a blank stare. He gave it a smile. "Well," Temari remarked as Shikamaru brought the birds close to them, So, is this your first move in your plan to become king of the birds? Do please tell me the next step of your grand strategy? To wait, Shikamaru answered. Ah, Temari said. She turned to face the unusually composed bird and extended her hand to touch it. Curious. I wonder. Shikamaru was shouted from a distance, interrupting whatever ideas they might have had. Shikamaru. Ino yelled as she stalked Temari and her former colleague. What do you think you're doing? Hello, Ino, Shikamaru said with a friendly grin. The Yamanaka retorted, don't hello me like we're running into each at the store. What are you doing? The birds caught in his shadows were indicated by Shikamaru. Just wanted to confirm that these are yours. Huh? Said Ino. Oh, I see, that was your aim all along. What's your purpose? Simple, Shikamaru answered. I want you and the others to stop shadowing our every step. Before she could finish speaking, Ino said, but. Temari studied the birds as she stooped over them in Shikamaru's dark embrace. Were you really using your jutsu? Oh, yeah, Ino hesitantly replied. Temari questioned, you went that far just so you could spy on us? Ino hesitated before responding, and her lips curled back. Yes, was her final response. Shikamaru said, what's up with you, Ino? I know you love your gossip, but you've been excessive with your tailing of us ever since we got together. I'm just happy for you guys, Ino stumbled to say. I want to see you do well. Shikamaru scowled. I think you're taking that a little too literally. Yeah, Temari repeated. Is there something else going on with you? Ino turned her back on the pair. She turned back to them and said, it's nothing, just. Listen, I'll stop using my jutsu to tail you guys, okay? Oh, thank you, Shikamaru said. But, are you sure that you're okay? Ino responded, yeah, I'm fine, and turned to leave. Temari remarked, that was odd, once the Yamanaka was out of earshot. Watching his former teammate, Shikamaru nodded. Yeah, something's eating at her. Her behavior, it's an outlet for something else she's feeling. Temari said, you think so? I do, Shikamaru replied. Sakura was walking through the village's streets late at night, her features hidden by a hooded cloak. She was on a personal, covert mission. She walked up to a shuttered shack and knocked 3 times on the metal door that covered the entrance. Sakura entered a warm, inviting light as it opened in response. Tucci grinned and shouted, welcome to Ichiraku, as Sakura entered the shuttered food stand. She said, thank you, and continued inside. Naruto yelled out, hey, Sakura, and gestured for her to come sit with him and sigh. Sakura remarked, you don't need to point yourself out, Naruto, as she walked over. You're the only people in the place. Oh, right, sorry, Naruto said with a wide smile. I'm just so excited. We haven't been able to a team reunion like this without being interrupted in such a long time, you know what I mean? Sakura grinned to herself. Yeah, I do. She turned to face Ayame, who was ready to take their orders behind the counter while her father began preparing the meal. Thank you for suggesting this. It was a great idea to let us in after closing. It's no problem, Ayame answered. While we're grateful that Naruto's fame has rubbed off on our little shop, we understand how hard it is for you guys to come here and not be swamped by fans and admirers. This is the least we could do for our favorite customers. Sakura then sat down beside her former comrades and they had their first quiet reunion supper together in a very long time. They laughed, reminisced about the past, discussed their lives, and ate delicious fuda in Naruto's case, enormous amounts of it. Naruto spoke glowingly about his new connection with Hinata, while Sakura talked about her work at the hospital and her studies and ideas to improve the village's medical section. Sakura took some time to notice that Sai was less talkative in the middle of it all. Sakura questioned the former root member, is there something going on with you? Even by his own standards, Sai was being reclusive, even though he had never been one to share his innermost thoughts with people. Oh, sorry, Sai said. It's just, well, it's Ino. Sakura inquired, what about her? She was aware that the Yamanaka had been pursuing her former comrade for a while. Sai closed his eyes, obviously carefully considering what he was saying. We've been spending more time together lately, but... Sakura pressed, but what? I'm not sure I have the vocabulary to explain it, Sai replied. It's like she wants to be around me, but there's something about it that's pulling her away too. Sakura responded, I see, putting this away as a riddle to be solved at a later time. Don't worry about it, man, Naruto exclaimed, encircling Sai's shoulders with his arm. Girls are weird and hard to understand. I'm telling you, I'm so glad that I figured things out with Hinata and don't have to worry about that anymore. Sai questioned. Is that so? Sakura stared down at the bowl of ramen in front of her as Naruto rambled on about the nature of women, unsure of how she was going to handle the situation. With a folder full of documents under his arm, Shikamaru strolled through the streets, gazing at the ground. Although it was a fairly typical courier journey, Shikamaru's thoughts were engaged in an unusual way. He was consumed by Ino's peculiar conduct, which he was unable to shake. He hardly noticed that he had just arrived at the hospital, his destination. He paused when a pink-haired face appeared in the upper corner of his field of vision. Sakura said, "Those for me, Shikamaru." Shikamaru removed the folder from under his arm and gave it to the medical ninja, needing a minute to refocus his mind. Yeah. Sakura accepted the folder and said, "Is something up?" It's nothing," was Shikamaru's automatic response. Actually," he said after changing his mind, "it's Ino. Something's up with her and I'm not sure what it is." Sakura dipped her head to the side and pressed, "What about her?" In an attempt to come up with the phrases, Shikamaru scratched the back of his skull. "She's been very aggressive with how she's been keeping tabs on Temari and me. But when we confronted her about it yesterday she just... I'm not sure how to put it. It was very strange." "I think I understand what you mean," Sakura said. "I've joined her a few times too." Spy," said Shikamaru. "You were spying on us." "Yeah, you're right," Sakura acknowledged. "We were just so excited to see you guys do well, I guess we got carried away. Although, I think Ino might have had another motive." Shikamaru cast a doubtful glance at the medical ninja. "Another motive? What do you mean?" "You know that Ino's had her eyes on Sai for a while now, right?" Sakura inquired. "Heard a thing or two about it," Shikamaru answered. "Well, I had a team reunion dinner last night with Sai and Naruto," Sakura replied. "Long story short, it sounds like Ino and Sai have been hitting some roadblocks." "I see," said Shikamaru. "That makes sense, actually. Sai's always had a difficult time deciphering and expressing emotions, and Ino is such a romantic that she's probably frustrated that it's not happening like she imagined in her head." Sakura agreed with the Nara's judgment by nodding. "That's probably correct. I'd bet you anything that with her own romance stalling, she started living vicariously through you and Temari." "Sounds creepy when you put it like that," Shikamaru remarked. "But that's probably the truth of it, or close enough at least. What a drag." Sakura questioned, "What is?" "I've got to figure out some kind of way to help her," Shikamaru answered. He pivoted and began to leave the hospital. "I owe it to her, after everything we've been through together." "Wait," Sakura yelled. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "Thank you, but you've already done enough," Shikamaru answered. "From this point on, this is a mission for good old Team 10. Temari rapped on Shikamaru's front door. She and Shikamaru had decided that she hadn't been there in a while. Even though the little army of bystanders had been following them with good intentions, they both felt uneasy about bringing his mother into contact with them. However, Temari assumed that those worries were no longer justified now that the Ino ringleader had been dealt with. Yoshino Nara opened the door and exclaimed, "Hey, Temari," with a big smile. "I'm so glad you decided to come back." "Oh, thank you, Mrs. Nara," Temari said. Yoshino grasped Temari's hands. "Oh, you don't have to, Mrs. Nara, me. You can call me Mom." Temari started, as she moved away from the elder woman. "I don't think we're that far along yet." "Yet, huh?" Yoshino asked, smirking as she leaned closer to the sand kunoichi. Temari reddened. Yeah, I guess." "Well, that's good to hear, sweetie," Yoshino answered. "I'm sure you've figured it out already, but most Nara men have incredible potential but will only ever be as strong as the women in their lives make them. I'm glad he found someone as capable as you." Temari grinned. "You don't have to tell me twice." "I'm glad," said Yoshino. The mother moved aside and motioned for the sand kunoichi to come in, saying, "Oh, but enough chatter, the boys are waiting for you in the kitchen." Temari murmured, "Thank you," as she entered the Nara home. Temari made her way to the kitchen, where Shikamaru and Choji were seated across from one another at the table, following the familiar yet unfamiliar twists around the home. The former said, "Oh, good, you're here," as soon as she entered. "Yeah," Temari said, taking a seat beside her boyfriend. "What's this about?" "It's Ino," Shikamaru said. Temari questioned, "What about her?" "We're playing matchmaker," Choji answered. Temari said, I'm sorry, but when you summoned me here I thought that this would be something serious." "Oh, but it is," Choji replied. "Ino's had her eyes set on Sai for a while and word lately is that their relationship has been stalling. It seems that it's been a great strain on her. Shikamaru agreed with his best friend by nodding. That's right. What's more, Sakura and I concluded that the reason that Ino was so aggressive with following us was that she was living out her romantic fantasies through us. I see, Temari said, and you wish to help her through this. That goes without question, Shikamaru answered. We've been through so much together, there's really no other choice, Shoji said. Temari pondered while folding her fingers together and resting her chin on them. Very well then. I shall join you. Ino helped me push through my problems, so it's only right I return the favor. What problems? Inquired Shikamaru. Temari came back and asked, did I never tell you? Well. Let's just say that this fitting. Shoji got up from his chair and raised his fist. Then everything's a go. Come on guys, let's go discuss the plans over barbecue. Temari said. Can't we just use the perfectly good table we're sitting at right now? Shikamaru got up and started to follow his best friend out of the kitchen. Come on, this is an Ino Shikacho problem. It's only proper that we solve it in an Ino Shikacho way. Temari started to reply, but changed her mind. Rather, she grinned and got to her feet, realizing that she might as well enter their world at this point. I'm telling you, that is how we should do it, Temari replied, gesturing to her lover with chopsticks loaded with barbecue. So I heard, Shikamaru said, looking down as Choji arranged additional beef strips on the charcoal grill that was integrated into their table. It was safe to say that they had made some headway after arriving at one of the old Team Asuma's favorite eateries to work out a strategy for helping Sai and Ino get over their romantic roadblocks. But when Temari began to take charge of the conversation and establish herself, Shikamaru was taken aback. With his eyes fixed on the sizzling steak, Shikamaru went on, but I can't say that I'm comfortable with what you're suggesting. Temari chewed on the chunk of meat she had just put in her mouth, shrugging. She responded, what can I say? Think of it as payback, once the food had passed her throat. Shoji remarked, I get that Ino tricked you into confessing to Shikamaru, as he removed the juiciest piece of meat from the grill and placed it on his plate. Still, it seems kind of cruel to make Ino think that she's in a dangerous situation when she's not. What goes around comes around, Temari answered. Besides, you guys said yourselves that the reason for their issues is that Ino expects Sai to be like the boys she imagined in her head when he isn't. Don't you think the best way around that is to let her see what he's like from the inside? She pointed at Shikamaru while imitating the mind transfer jutsu sign. You have a point, he remarked. I suppose that's the real brilliance of your scheme. Thank you, Temari answered. Besides, do either of you have a better suggestion? After exchanging eyes, Shikamaru responded on their behalf. No. Temari raised her glass of water to make a toast. Then let's hope for a successful matchmaking with a little revenge on the side. Shoji went up to Temari's after picking up his drink. Sounds good. Her partner sat stoically across the table from her, and the Sand Kunoichi scowled at him. Fine, replied Shikamaru. He picked up his glass and clinked it against those of his accomplices, saying, it's a drag, but let's do it. Sakura noticed a shadowy figure out of the corner of her eye as she was making her way home from her job at the hospital. Who's there? She exclaimed, sure that she could face the person head-on without fear. Shikamaru said, whoa, no need to be so jumpy, as he moved into Sakura's field of vision. The medical ninja unwinded. Oh, sorry, didn't realize it was you. What's up? The Nara said, remember that issue with Sai and Ino? Yeah, Sakura replied. I recall you saying that it was an Ino Shikacho matter and that you'd be the ones to solve it. I did, Shikamaru acknowledged. We've figured out a plan, but it will work out better if you get involved. Sakura grinned. So now you need me. In response, Shikamaru sighed. He handed the medical ninja a folded piece of paper and said, don't get all smart with me, that would be a drag. Can I count on you to take care of this? Sakura picked up the sheet, opened it, and skimmed the first few lines. Wow, this seems extreme. Shikamaru defended himself, saying, don't ask me, it's Temari's idea. Besides, you should read the rest of it. Sakura did as instructed, and as she read the remainder of the article, her eyes grew wide with insight. Okay, I see how I fit into this. But how do you guys fit in? Don't worry about that, Shikamaru answered. You do your part, and we'll do ours. Alright, Sakura sighed. If that's what you've got to say, then I'll trust you on this. Thank you, said Shikamaru. Don't worry, we'll take care of rest. Sakura examined the note again while Shikamaru withdrew into the darkness. I hope no one at the hospital asks why these are missing from the medical lab, she thought to herself. Ino followed Shikamaru through the forest, pushing a low branch out of her face. She questioned, "What are we doing out here?" "I told you, I found a great spot for cloud watching," Shikamaru answered. "In all our years together, when have I ever so much as hinted that enjoy cloud watching?" Ino replied. Glancing over his shoulder, Shikamaru grinned at his former teammate. "Just trust me, I'm sure you'll find something worthwhile." "Arg," Ino moaned. "You're lucky that I value our friendship." "Almost there," Shikamaru remarked as they began to ascend a slope in the area covered by trees. They quickly reached the top of the rise, where they were standing next to a big tree at the top of the hill. Ino looked up at the sky, which was just visible through the leaf canopy above them. "I'm pretty sure that first part of cloud watching is being able to see the sky." "What is this about, Shikamaru?" "Nothing," the Nara answered. He hesitated and seemed to stare behind Ino before saying, "Honest, we just need to get up." "What is Sai doing here?" When Ino turned back, she spotted the object of her desire lying down under a tree's shadow on the slope a considerable distance away. She questioned, "Why would he be out here?" Shikamaru lightly shoved his former teammate. "Why don't you go over there and talk to him?" "What?" cried Ino. She glanced at the former root member again and said, "I can't do that. We're going through some things. Besides, it looks like he's sleeping." Sai appeared to be asleep, yet there was something odd about it. Instead of being a person who had deliberately chosen to lie down on a spot, it seemed as if he were a rag doll that had just been dropped somewhere. So he is," said Shikamaru. He gestured to a location and said, "Wait, what's going on there?" Ino followed his instructions and saw a figure standing on a tree branch with a mask covering their face and dark clothing covering their entire body. Before drawing a kunai, they were clearly fixated on Sai. "Oh, no, Ino, you need to use your mind transfer jutsu on Sai," screamed Shikamaru. "What?" asked the Yamanaka. "Why would we do that? It would be an invasion of his privacy. Isn't there something else we can do? What is even going on here? Something isn't adding up." "Ino," Shikamaru replied, taking his former teammate by the shoulders and giving her a direct look. "Whoever that person is, they are obviously about to attack Sai and he's in no position to defend himself. We're the only people here and your mind transfer technique is the only thing that could reach them in time." But, Ino stumbled to say. Shikamaru questioned, "Ino, are you willing to risk letting one of our comrades die?" "To let Sai die?" With her kunai ready, the person in the treetops was about to jump down at Sai when the blonde kunoichi whirled around, gritting her teeth. She made a choice at that very moment, directing the hand sign for her clan's signature method toward the person she was attracted to. The skillful application of the mind transfer jutsu, which sent her awareness hurtling out into the world on a collision course with the unconscious Sai, calmed her anxiety in the moment. Then she let him see. Sai pulled his short sword from his back and parried the kunai with it as she saw the shrouded man now bearing down on her. Ino used all of Sai's strength to toss them as far as possible after pushing the enemy's weapon to the side with a flick of her wrist, opening them up for a kick to the midsection. The ninja with the mask briefly met the possessed Sai's gaze while flipping in the air, then broke free and vanished into the bushes. Ino waited for a time to see if they would launch another assault, but they never did. Ino heard footsteps on the leaf-covered woodland floor and turned to see Shikamaru approaching her while bearing her corpse on her back. "Looks they've run off," said Shikamaru. "Good job." "Thanks," Ino said, using her own rhythm but speaking in Sai's voice. "Now can you put me down? I'm ready to go back to my body." "Sure," Shikamaru replied, beginning to drop the Yamanaka's lifeless body to the floor. "But, since we're here, why don't you take a look at what's going on in Sai's head?" "What?" asked Ino. "Look, I shouldn't have to tell you. Listen, I know you're into him," Shikamaru said. "This is a chance to figure out how to get closer, isn't it?" Ino started before Sai's cheeks began to flush and she could feel the blood rushing into them. "Okay, fine." Sai closed her eyes and focused her awareness on herself. Contrary to what some ignorant people might believe, Ino was unable to read the thoughts of the person she had shifted into. She was a separate being even though they were in the same brain. Maybe there was a more thorough scientific explanation, but Ino never felt the need to figure it out. But only in very rare circumstances could she discern the general emotional condition of the person she was possessing. When she used the mind transfer jutsu against Sakura during their first Chunin exam duel, it was the most memorable moment in her memory. Sakura was forced to kick Ino out of her thoughts due to the overwhelming force of that pile of repressed wrath and frustration. She could also tell if the person in question was experiencing some kind of agony or bliss. The issue was that she had no idea what she might discover in Sai. She might not uncover anything because he was always so quiet. But it wasn't insignificant. It was so tiny that one could mistake it for that, but it was genuine and resonant. Similar to Sakura during the Chunin exams, Ino experienced intense emotional outbursts. But now that she was staring at Sai, she was unable to get rid of this emptiness. She was aware that Sai's upbringing in Root had impeded his emotional growth, but she could now witness the full impact. However, there was something there, a spark that held a power greater than anything Ino had ever experienced. All it required was guidance and nurturing. In a way that she had previously been unaware of, she now knew what she had to do. She then opened her eyes. On the woodland floor, Sai awoke. Why had they been unconscious in the woods, I wonder? He was having trouble recalling how he got there. Why was Ino holding him in her arms, too? The former Root member questioned, what's going on? Nothing you need to worry about, Ino murmured, stroking his hair tenderly. Everything's going to be all right. Okay, but, Arg. Sai said, but his ideas were cut off by a throbbing ache in his brain. What's wrong? Inquired Ino. For the first time, Sai noticed Shikamaru standing close by while he took a moment to collect himself. It was strange, he responded at last. Sakura told me that there was something I needed to see, then she led me out here and then, nothing. Huh, that is strange, said Ino. While they were talking, Sai could hear footsteps getting closer. An individual approached the group wearing a mask and dark, form-fitting clothing. In a male voice that seemed somewhat familiar, they said, hey, is everything going all right out here? You, Ino yelled, drawing Sai's short sword from its sheath and aiming it at the newcomer. Surprised, the masked figure retreated. Everyone stood motionless for a single beat, anticipating each other's next move. The guy in the cloak then turned to face Shikamaru. I forgot to undo it, didn't I? Yeah, Shikamaru replied, his expression full of irritation. The man with the mask went on, so I do it now. With a sigh, Shikamaru answered. Go ahead, the truth will be less of a drag than anything else we could come up with at this point. Ino released her hold on her weapon. What's going on here? A cloud of smoke appeared and obscured the masked man after he made a hand signal. Choji was standing in his place as it cleared. What the hell? Ino cried as Sai's sword was lowered. What are you guys doing? Shikamaru grabbed Sai by the arm and pulled him up. Come on, we'll explain once we're back at something resembling civilization, he said. Can you walk? Sai said, yeah, as he got up and felt his own weight. Before long, Ino put his arm around her shoulders. He chose to accept the help without complaint even if he didn't truly need it. With the others trailing behind, Shikamaru started to walk back towards the settlement and the forest's edge. They emerged from the forest after a brief stroll and stopped directly on the village's edge. Shikamaru yelled, okay, you guys can come out now. Temari and Sakura emerged from around the corner of the closest building and approached the group, saying, the jig is up. Ino glanced between her former teammates and the newcomers. What is going on here? Temari grinned. Let's say that it's both payback and returning a favor. Wah, Ino started, then looked at Shikamaru. I think I see, she added, returning her attention to the San Kunoichi. Uncertain of what was happening, Sai glanced back and forth at each of the other parties. Can someone please explain to me what is going on? As the former Root member looked, Ino hesitated. Well, to start with, let's just say that I had a hand in getting Shikamaru and Temari together. You might say that it was a little underhanded too. To be more precise, Temari said, she misled me into thinking that Shikamaru was injured when he was in fact not. In my rush I ended up making a fool of myself. Sai questioned, and this is payback for that. Yeah, I guess you can say that. Ino said, forcing a smile. But, she and Shikamaru did finally get together, so, hooray. And that's where returning the favor comes in, Temari remarked. Sai said, wait, you mean, before turning to look at the Yamanaka, who was still holding his body up with his arm draped over her shoulders. Ino became a deep scarlet. She looked at Sakura and said, yeah, I'm guessing that's what she means. Except, I can't figure out what your part in all this is. The medical ninja reached into her pocket and took out an empty syringe. Well, I brought him out here before I knocked him out with a specially made cocktail of drugs. Drugs, cried Ino. Don't you think that's a little extreme? Temari gave the other blonde a sly smile in return. Hey, you started it, girl. I just upped the ante. At this point I would like to say that Choji and I were against the idea, said Shikamaru. Unfortunately, we really couldn't think of another way to force you to use your mind transfer on Sai. Mind transfer, repeated Ino. Oh, I think I know what you guys were trying to get at. The four conspirators grinned at Sai and Ino. In an attempt to get more precise information, Sai said, Ino. The Yamanaka gave him a brief glance before focusing on everyone else. Hey everyone, would you mind leaving us for a little while? After we catch up, we'll go have some barbecue. Shikamaru said, sounds good, and turned to leave. Choji said, we'll save a spot for you, as he trailed his friend. With a sly smile, Temari said, just remember, we're even now. When the conversation was over, Ino nodded in response, the Sand Kunoichi rushing to catch up with her beloved. Sakura turned around after following the others, saying, Sai, Ino, I hope you guys won't have any hard feelings over this. I think we'll get through it, billboard brow, Ino smiled in response. Good to hear, Ino pig, Sakura murmured, returning the expression before rushing out. When they were alone, Ino pulled away from Sai's arm and turned to grin softly at him. So, what precisely is happening here? Sai inquired. Our friends were trying to help me see something, Ino said. I think they succeeded. Observe what? Sai asked. Listen, I've had these ideas in my head about how a boy and girl should act in a relationship since I was young, Ino said, taking Sai's hands in her own. However, I now realize that putting that picture onto you was unfair. You're a special flower that has just begun to bloom and is still figuring out how you'll look once you've reached full bloom. I would adore the opportunity to assist you in getting there. After pondering Ino's words for a while, Sai grinned and said, I think that sounds great, beautiful. Sakura and Choji accompanied Shikamaru and Temari as they strolled hand in hand to the barbecue restaurant. Well, I think that went better than expected, Choji said. Even if you made a mistake, correct? Shikamaru retaliated sharply. Well, you don't need to put it like that, his closest friend pouted in response. You know, this was actually kind of fun, Sakura said, giggling at the interaction. Perhaps we ought to work with someone else. Choji, perhaps. Oh, you don't need to worry about that, the Akamichi said with a wide smile. The rest of the group came to a complete stop. What are you referring to? I haven't seen you with anyone lately, Shikamaru inquired. Don't worry, as I mentioned. By the way, I'm actually leaving the village soon, Choji said as he carried on walking. A few weeks on a long assignment in the hidden cloud. Sakura, Temari, and Shikamaru all observed Choji moving along with a lighter gait, exchanging doubtful looks as they wondered what he might be talking about. As Temari started her morning stretches, she threw off her blanket and reached for her toes. With a habitual ease, she moved diagonally across her body to grab one foot with the opposite hand, then repeated the process on the other side. As she did this, her head turned to the side to look at her nightstand, which had a picture frame on top that had only been there the night before. It contained a picture of herself, Shikamaru, Ino, and Sai together following their first double date. All of them were beaming, with the exception of Sai, who appeared to be grinning subtly. Temari could feel the smile returning to her own face as the memories came back to her, but it was only a brief diversion before she resumed her usual routine. After finishing the stretches, Temari had a quick breakfast, showered, and changed into new clothes. Satisfied with her life in general as well as that morning, she headed for the front door. Just as she reached for the handle, she brushed a stray hair back behind her ear, only to discover that there was something there that shouldn't have been there. She then pivoted and made her way back to her bedroom, where she could clearly see the item she had neglected. Temari took up her hidden sand headband from her nightstand, whispered to herself, I can't believe I almost forgot this, tied it on without giving it any more thought, turned around, and left the apartment. Yoshino Nara exclaimed, Oh, Shikamaru, when her son approached the front entrance. Mom, what is it? I have to get to work, Shikamaru inquired. Oh, it's nothing major, Yoshino said. Just wanted to let you know that the elders are meeting today. The mention of the oldest living members of the Nara clan made Shikamaru sigh. They were a group of clan members from outside the main line who had retired from being shinobi, but they did have a great deal of informal power within the clan, mostly because of the respect the various members had as seasoned Chunin and Jonin. Many of the younger members of the clan tended to listen to them when they spoke, enough that they could even force decisions on the clan head on the rare occasions when they could actually rouse themselves to a cause. "I'm sure they're just going to argue in circles about some Inen thing," Shikamaru said. "It's what they normally do." Yoshino looked at her son inquiringly. "Have you not heard?" "What did you hear?" Shikamaru inquired. "They're going to talk about you," Yoshino replied. "I mean, you and Temari. You've been the talk of the clan, believe it or not." "Seem to be the talk in a lot of corners," Shikamaru said, exhaling deeply through his nose. He turned back and continued walking out of the house after saying, "What a drag." Yoshino yelled after him, "Don't be surprised if your ambivalence comes back to bite you in the ass." "I knew you'd say that." Temari sighed and tossed the stack of papers on the corner of her desk before turning in her chair to face the window. Before long, she found herself staring at the Hokage residence across the street, which window was Shikamaru's office. Temari could never quite recall. She was sitting at her desk in the Sand Embassy, going over some papers, all of the standard fare, a couple of joint missions to coordinate, a proposal for the next Chunin exams, and a few other points of potential cooperation or tension. Temari hurried to turn her chair back and grab at the papers that were still on her desk in an attempt to appear busy as the door to her office banged open, but she was only partially successful before one of her assistants intervened. The young Sand Kunoichi said, "Message for you, ma'am," and placed an envelope on the ambassador's desk. Temari gazed at the envelope for a moment before returning her focus to her assistant. "Who is it from?" "I'm not sure," the assistant said. "An older gentleman just dropped it off at the front desk and said to give it to you." "Okay then," Temari responded, picking up the envelope. "You can go now," she continued, motioning for the assistant to depart. As the aide left the room, the Sand Ambassador turned her chair back to the window, slipped a finger inside the envelope's fold, pulled it across, and tore it open to reveal a folded letter that was only 1 page long. She took it out and read it, a brief endeavor because it was a short letter, but it caused an emotional response that was entirely out of proportion to its length. Temari straightened her back, a frown appeared on her face, and she took a deep breath through her nose before walking out of her office with heavy, forceful steps while holding the letter in her clenched fist. Her aide, who had just delivered the envelope down the hall, jumped in shock as Temari threw open the office door. "Ma'am, do you need anything?" As the ambassador passed by without glancing at the assistant, she inquired, weakly extending a hand to Temari. As Temari left the building and headed across the street to the Hokage residence, other employees and visitors to the embassy avoided eye contact and made an effort to stay out of her way. Shizune. As soon as she entered the foyer, she shouted, "Hello, ma'am," the receptionist said, blinking in shock at the Sand Ambassador's unexpected presence. "I'll get lady if you can wait a moment." "Shizune." Temari let out a scream. "What is it?" the Hokage's assistant exclaimed as she raced from a passageway. "Has something occurred?" With her head turned to watch for anything, she stood prepared. "Where is Shikamaru's office?" Temari asked, clenching her fist over the crumpled letter. "Oh, Shizune murmured as she stood there stunned. "Right this way," she finally said, taking tentative steps down a nearby hallway. Temari trailed behind the older Kunoichi, staring straight ahead. Temari followed Shizune along the hallways, but tunnel vision prevented her from keeping track of the bends. She didn't consider anything but going forward until she came to a door. "Hello, Shika," was the only thing Shizune could say when she knocked on the door with Shikamaru's name on the plaque next to it. Temari grabbed around her, turned the doorknob, and threw the door open. "What does this mean, Shikamaru?" Sand Kunoichi shouted when displaying the letter to her partner. With a raised eyebrow, the Nara clan head gazed back. "What does this mean?" "This." As Shizune discreetly left, Temari yelled and slammed the crumpled letter on Shikamaru's desk. "Those idiots," Shikamaru said as he read the letter, pulling it closer to himself and flattening it against the top of his desk. "You don't need to worry about them," he said, turning his gaze back to his lover. "They're attempting to turn me into a political instrument. Whoever sent this wants me to declare my intention to marry into the clan before a combined gathering of the Hidden Sands and Hidden Leaf's leadership." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" shouted Temari. "This council of Eldersa, who are they?" Shikamaru retorted, "They're just a bunch of retired shinobi from the Nara clan, just ignore them because they have no real power." "I constantly do it." Temari leaned over the Nara clan head and placed her hands on Shikamaru's desk, saying, I've spent the majority of my life being a political tool because of who my father and brother are. Because of my boyfriend, I have no desire to follow suit. Try to ignore that, Temari said, pulling back and turning on her heels. She then stomped out of the office, slamming the door behind her. Shikamaru sighed and rubbed his temples as he adjusted his seat to face the window once the echoes of Temari's passage subsided. He could see the sand embassy across the street, towering over the landscape in a manner he couldn't remember it doing before. This is going to be such a drag, he declared out loud. Shikamaru waited by himself in a dango shop, tapping his fingers against the side of the table. Are you sure you're all right? The store owner said, leaning over the counter to see how the young man was doing. Yeah, I'm fine, Shikamaru replied. After taking a quick look over the street, the older guy spoke to Shikamaru once more. You've been here for 45 minutes, kid. I think you've been stood up. In response, Shikamaru sighed. He didn't want to say it aloud, but he was very certain the man was correct. For example, if he simply refused to acknowledge it, things would simply return to how they were. Shikamaru knew that wouldn't be the case, of course, and he didn't need to utilize his intelligence to figure that out. He got up from his chair and moved to the counter. The young man approached the store, clearly sympathetic to Shikamaru's suffering, and the owner grimaced. Here, Shikamaru remarked, taking out a modest sum of money and placing it on the counter. The store owner stared at the cash for a moment before turning back to face Shikamaru. Oh, I can't take this, you haven't ordered anything. Just head home and try to get over this. No, please, urged Shikamaru. I need to feel like I've finished my business here before I try figure everything else out. The store exhaled deeply and then gently nodded. He said, okay, kid, and took the money from the counter. If that's what you think you need to move on from this, I won't stop you. Shikamaru murmured, thanks, turned around, and went out onto the street. He went home since he had nowhere else to go. Shikamaru yelled, Hey, Mom, as he entered the house. I'm in the living room, son, she answered. When Shikamaru entered that room, he saw his mother reclining in the recliner with her feet up and her apron wrapped around one arm of the chair. As he moved into her line of sight, she asked him, How was your day? You were right, Mom, Shikamaru answered. Of course I am, my idiot boy, Yoshino chastised her son. For all that everybody says that you're the smartest person in the village, you can be really dense about some things. I won't deny it, Shikamaru declared. But I can't just sit back and take the punishment for my mistakes. I've got to figure out a way to fix them. Yoshino inhaled deeply before carrying on with the discussion. Good, I was hoping that your laziness wouldn't cut you off from the best thing to happen in your life since you made Chunin. Now, put that brain of yours to work and figure out a plan. After responding with a nod, Shikamaru took a seat on the couch. As was his tendency whenever he gave a problem a lot of consideration, he leaned back in the seat and used his fingers to form a rectangle. Yoshino said to her son, Oh, this is a real conundrum for you, isn't it? I don't think I've seen you make that gesture since the last time you played your father at shogi. Shikamaru gave his mother a frown. If you're going to talk, say something that will help me figure this out. HMPH, Yoshino sighed. Okay then, let's start with what exactly made Temari so mad about the letter. She feels that she's being used as a political tool, Shikamaru retorted. She grew up a Kazecage's daughter, and is now a Kazecage's sister. I think, in her mind, that our relationship was something that just about her, and not her status. That letter just brought it all right back up in her face. Okay, Yoshino replied. Is there a way to make your relationship not political again? No, I don't think so, Shikamaru replied. That's all based on how other people view things, and the elders see it as a chance to bring the clan more prestige. Nothing I can do to change that. Not directly, Yoshino said. After pausing, Shikamaru turned to face his mother. He questioned her, What do you mean? When you were a kid, how did I get you to do your chores? She replied. You'd threaten me, Shikamaru replied. No, at a more fundamental level than that, Yoshino answered. Under normal circumstances, you would decide that not working was preferable to working. But if I changed your circumstances, I could make it the opposite. That's a pretty euphemistic way to put it, said Shikamaru. He straightened his posture and said, But I see your point. I've got some letters of my own to write. To the elders, inquired Yoshino. Not just them, Shikamaru replied, getting up and leaving the room. Temari sat in her workplace, thinking about her partner while gazing out the window at the Hokage residence across the street and through the night air. She told herself that even though she was upset with him, she still considered him to be her boyfriend. Perhaps she was upset with her circumstances rather than with him. However, she was upset with him for his casual approach to the matter. The sound of her office door opening behind her distracted her from her reflections. One of her assistants entered when she turned in her chair. She questioned, "What are you doing here? We're done for the day, you should be heading home." "I was just about to, ma'am," the assistant answered. "But just when I was about to head out I heard some news that I thought you'd want to hear." "Let's hear it then," Temari replied. The assistant hesitated for a time, unsure of how to respond to this news. She simply said it out loud. "Shikamaru Nara has left for the village hidden in the sand." Temari questioned, What? She asked again. "Is he on some kind of mission?" "No, that doesn't make sense. If there was a mission to the sand I would have been informed of it as ambassador." "My lady," the assistant interrupted Temari. "The rumor is that he's defecting." "Defecting?" cried Temari. "That doesn't make a damn bit of sense. We're allies. It's not like we're at war or anything, there's nothing for him to defect to." "It sounded odd to me too, ma'am," the assistant answered. "But word is that he's already left the village and is headed for the border." Temari reclined in her chair, attempting to allow her logical mind to function in spite of the emotional tempest that had suddenly engulfed it. "What has the Hokage done about it?" "Apparently Lord Sixth shrugged and said that he'd get to it after he woke up tomorrow morning," the aide replied. Temari's mouth hung open as she gazed back at the woman. With her eyes widening in shock, she got up from her chair and started gathering her personal belongings. "That makes zero sense. Unless, I'm leaving for the village tonight. If you receive any important documents while I'm gone I don't know, hang on to it until I get back." The sudden choice surprised the assistant. "Ma'am, I understand he's important to you, but do you really think this is the best idea?" "I have no clue," Temari replied. After gathering her belongings, she said, "But I feel a hell of a lot better about it than I would just sitting around here and waiting." Her steps were filled with a strong feeling of purpose as she left the office. The sound of someone knocking on the door drew Gaara's attention away from the letter he was holding. "Come in," he yelled. The door opened, revealing Konkuro's painted purple visage. He entered the office fully and said, "You wanted me for something?" "Yes," Gaara replied. "Read this," he continued, extending the letter to his brother. With the paper in hand, Konkuro strode across the office and swiftly skimmed over it. He said, "When did you get this?" "First thing this morning," Gaara replied. Konkuro pressed, "Are you sure this isn't a joke?" "We're not talking about Naruto here," Gaara answered. "This isn't someone who would go to such lengths for a prank." "No, that's fair," Konkuro acknowledged. "But still, I'm not sure how comfortable I am with using the official functions of the village to help them with their personal relationship issues." "It's not any different from when I made Temari ambassador," Gaara retorted. "Besides, when has the political and the personal ever been separate in our family?" "Again, that's fair," Konkuro remarked. "What would you like me to do about it?" "Obviously we have to look after family," Gaara remarked. "So take a squad and go pick up our new friend from the border." In a furious rush towards the border, Temari tore through the trees, leaping from limb to branch. Her sense of urgency and pure adrenaline were keeping her awake and alert beyond all reason, even though she had long since passed the point of tiredness. But they weren't preventing her from making awkward errors. She misjudged her jump due to her fatigue and haste. Her shin struck a heavy branch just a few inches away, breaking it in two and sending her sprawling to the forest floor. Temari was knocked out of her manic condition by the abrupt plummet and contact. She could feel fatigue take hold of her as she gazed up at the moonlight peeking through the tree leaves. She made an unsuccessful attempt to fight it because her adrenaline was waning. Temari fell into a dreamless sleep, her eyelids fluttering shut. As they moved away from the land of wind boundary and toward the village hidden in the sand, Konkuro asked Shikamaru, "Are you sure this is a good idea?" "Not at all," Shikamaru replied. With a sigh, Konkuro shook his head. "Don't you realize how risky this is?" According to Shikamaru, risk is the better alternative when the status quo is unacceptable. "You sure are a tactician," grinned Konkuro. "I assume that Gaara shared the letter with you," Shikamaru remarked. "He did," Konkuro affirmed. "If I understand correctly, the Hokage is supposed to be following you soon, and we're supposed to allow him to enter the village. What I don't get is all the theater bits you added." At that latter remark, Shikamaru laughed. I thought you of all people would have appreciated a bit of theater to spice things up, he remarked, grinning at the shinobi with face paint. PFF, whatever, Konkuro said. Regardless, there's one thing your letter wasn't clear on. Shikamaru asked, which was where Temari would be in all this, the sand shinobi asked. I hope she doesn't have to get involved, Shikamaru said. It seems to me that she's been through enough of this politics nonsense. At the leaf shinobi, Konkuro shook his head and clicked his tongue. You've got a lot more to learn about my sister then. She might not like the politics, but she will put herself through anything for her loved ones. That made Shikamaru laugh. That doesn't sound like such a bad thing. Temari moaned, experiencing the terrible sensation that she had just fallen asleep yet had not really rested. When she opened her eyes, she saw someone looking down at her. She adjusted her eyes to the morning light by blinking a few times. She noticed that they were donning a mask. She didn't recognize them for a few more seconds. Lord Hokage, she cried, leaping to her feet. Settle down, Kakashi said. I figured you might have gone out ahead of me, so I summoned my hounds to keep an eye out for you as I traveled. Temari sprang up and said, you did. Kakashi responded with a nod. Temari's smile quickly vanished. Of course, I'm an ambassador, she said. If something happens to me it could cause an international incident. Kakashi clarified, while that's definitely true, that wasn't the reason why I did it. You've become a part of our village, and as the Hokage it's my job to look out for you when I can. Temari questioned, even though I'm not really from your village. Being with Shikamaru doesn't change the fact that I'm a sand shinobi. True enough, and by the same token Shikamaru is still a leaf shinobi, Kakashi said. But you should know by now that the world we're building is not one where village loyalties endlessly divide us. You are a part of our village because of the bonds you've formed with not just Shikamaru, but so many other people. The same, I would think, is true of Shikamaru and the sand. Temari grinned, realizing the Hokage was correct. I guess I was still stuck in the old way thinking, despite everything. Kakashi remarked, it's okay, we've all had to adjust. Now come, your brothers should be preparing for our show. Temari repeated, show, what do you mean by that? Shikamaru sent 3 letters, Kakashi clarified. One to me, one to your brother, and one to the Nara clan's elders. Temari paused just long enough to take in what the Hokage had told her. I think I understand what he's planning, she replied. And I think I can improve it. Kakashi flashed one of his signature, you can tell I'm smiling even though you can't my face, smiles. I knew you two were a good match. Sitting in the shade, Shikamaru kept watch on the village hidden in the sand's main entrance. More than a day had passed since he had implemented his plan, and if he had a clear understanding of the timeline, the climax was drawing near. Gaara approached the young Nara while wearing his official cage robes. The Hokage is approaching the village at the head of a party of elders, just as you predicted, he said to Shikamaru. Shikamaru nodded and murmured, good, getting to his feet. Everything is going according to plan then. Gaara remarked, there's just one thing you didn't seem to account for. With a little sigh, Shikamaru said, Temari, right. Something similar was mentioned by Konkuro. As we speak she is entering the village by another route, he added, confirming Shikamaru's assertion with a nod. Taking a long breath and gazing thoughtfully at the main gates, Shikamaru considered the changing circumstances for a time before saying, you know what, I'm going to trust in Temari here. That seems like a wise thing to do, Gaara said. Shikamaru said, anyway, let's go meet them. We'll see about that. With a nod, Gaara created a cloud of sand beneath his and Shikamaru's feet, and the two of them flew down to the main gate, landing in front of Kakashi and the group of Nara clan elders. Come on over here, Shikamaru. One of the elders yelled, reprimanding the head of the Nara clan as though he were a kid. That had not been part of the plan, so Shikamaru just gazed at the elderly guy, unsure of how to react. Is there a means to communicate with your clan's leader? With a suitably bored expression, Kakashi inquired. It is when he is acting like a brat, the older replied. Throwing away all of his father's hard work, just for some girl. Before he could think to stop himself, Shikamaru's mouth opened, ready to respond to the elder man. However, he stopped himself, bringing his hands to his face so he wouldn't stop himself from derailing the plan, and then he put them in his pockets and went back to it. I've called you all here to announce that I will be moving to the village hidden in the sand, he stated, staring stoically at the elders. Relocating. One of the Nara men answered, you mean defect. Lord Hokage. Surely you cannot allow one of your most valued advisors to defect from the village. There's no defection here, Shikamaru explained to me in his letter, Kakashi said. He is remaining a shinobi of the leaf, just moving his residence to the sand. We used to refer to that as defection. One of the elders yelled, pounding his cane on the ground to accentuate the point, but the loose sand prevented the sound from rebounding and becoming as forceful as it would have on a hard surface. Shikamaru retorted, one can only defect to an enemy. The sand and leaf are allies. But before the conversation could go on, a tremendous gust of wind rushed through, blowing up the sand and prompting everyone in the room aside from the two Kaguya to brace themselves against it. A cackling laugh then pierced the dusty air. Shikamaru looked up and saw Temari floating atop her fan. Yes, ha ha ha. There's nothing you can do to stop us from claiming your top strategist for our own, she cried as she landed next to Shikamaru and wrapped her arm around him possessively. She gave Shikamaru a big smile that brought back memories of her brief time as the Leaf's adversary during the Chunin examinations. What? After Temari's dramatic appearance, one of the elders stammered out. Temari tightened her arm around Shikamaru and whispered, exactly what I said, we have all the leverage here. Feeling Temari's hold tighten his windpipe, Shikamaru coughed and smiled strangely at his clan elders, silently pleading with them to finally embrace the program. Grim-faced, one of the elders came up and asked, so what do you want? Temari let go of Shikamaru and said, to recognize our relationship for what it is, private. The elderly guy was surprised that a self-respecting shinobi would ask for something so trivial. That's all, as the other elders of the Nara clan whispered to one another behind him, all appearing to be equally surprised, he asked. Yes, Temari firmly said. Fine, the elder murmured to break the tense quiet after staring back at her in a way only a stubborn old guy can. At that moment, Kakashi moved up and said, Lord Cage, we would like to request accommodations for the night because we have traveled a great distance. Just treat us like any other village hidden in the leaves resident, there's no need for special care. With a smile, Gaara replied, gladly. The two Cage entered the sand village together, and the Nara elders glanced at each other, obviously perplexed in the way that only old men can when the world around them has changed and they were too late to notice. Eventually, they decided to follow the two shinobi commanders. There was nothing but stillness between Shikamaru and Temari as they stood by themselves at the village gates. Shikamaru inhaled deeply and started to say something, when Temari abruptly turned on him. You idiot, you brilliant fool, she mumbled as their lips parted. You had me worried, she said, clutching her partner. Temari slapped him across the face with her left palm before he could even feel the sting on his cheek. Shikamaru hugged him again and said, I'm sorry. I guess I was too desperate to fix everything as soon as possible. It's okay, Temari replied. Really, I'm just glad that you were able to figure out a way to make this all stop. Grinning at his girlfriend's sincere relief, Shikamaru thought of something. Hi, Temari, he sounded more serious as he spoke. Yeah, startled by Shikamaru's abrupt shift of tone, she answered. You know, Shikamaru said, putting words together in his head as he spoke. You are aware that Naruto and Hinata will soon tie the knot, correct? Yeah, the entire shinobi world knows, Temari replied. Flying by the seat of his pants, Shikamaru remarked, well, the thought just occurred to me. Maybe we should follow suit. Temari was so shocked that all she could do was blink at Shikamaru. He was terrified that he had said the incorrect thing for a split second. Then, however, she grinned and shouted the only word that came to mind at that very moment. Yes, Temari said, I have a question I'd like to ask, while seated at the restaurant table. Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Tenten, and Karui were among the other kunoichi seated at the table, and they all turned to face her. Are we done with the year of the weddings, or does Tenten have a steamy secret romance she has yet to tell us about? With the exception of Tenten, all the other women started laughing. No, she said, frantically flailing her hands. I have no interest in that, I promise. I spend too much time chasing after Guy and Lee anyway. Karui smirked and said, so what you're saying is that you are, in fact, already married to two men, emphasizing the point with two fingers. The others at the table chuckled, and Tenten flushed. Sakura said, when the laughing died down. You know, I guess we all did get married within a year of each other. Before taking a sip of her drink, Karui questioned, what, you didn't notice? Ino dismissively waved her hand. Oh please, Karui, you can only say that because your wedding was the last one and you were only a guest at the others. I mean, Between our normal duties and helping to prepare for each and every wedding, it was just one thing after another. We could barely catch our breath. Hinata gave a serious nod. It was quite a rush, wasn't it? I thought after Naruto and I said our vows we could take things easy for a while, but we ended up just getting roped into helping set up Shikamaru and Temari's wedding. Hey, at least ours was smaller than yours, Temari remarked. We got home from your ceremony and the only thing Shikamaru would say was, too loud, too big, and too much of a drag. The worst part was, I couldn't even disagree with him. Temari's mimicry of her husband made the other women laugh. You can't really call your wedding small though, Hinata said, grinning amiably at Temari. I mean, you involved 2 villages and it was easily the second biggest reception of any of them. Temari muttered in self-defense, well, the 2 villages part was kind of unavoidable. Ours is kind of a diplomatic relationship. Yeah, I'm grateful me and Sai had the leeway to have a small celebration after that, Ino said with a quick, breathy laugh and a smile. Sakura leaned in closer to her childhood friend and grinned, saying, and you had always bragged about how you were going to have the biggest wedding ever when we were kids. You guys big weddinged me out, Ino grumbled. In addition, Sakura, you hardly had a wedding. It wasn't until the day of the event that we learned about it. Sakura retreated from Ino's verbal abuse and resumed her regular sitting position. Hey, don't look at me, she said. I did everything in my power to persuade Sasuke that we should genuinely invite guests to our wedding. Yes, that was a little uncomfortable. Tenten turned to Karui and said, but at least it wasn't the last wedding we got to put on. After giving the weapons expert a quick glance, the Cloud Kunoichi shrugged her shoulders and said, I mean, yeah, I guess. Karui, when did Choji even have time to court you? I mean, I thought I had a pretty good grasp on my friends' love lives and suddenly you show up at Naruto and Hinata's wedding hanging off Choji's arm, Ino inquired. In response, Karui blushed and said, believe me, sometimes I don't even know. The girls all chuckled at the remark, but their laughter gradually faded as they realized that their time was running out and that their limited free time as wives and Kunoichi would soon become even more valuable. Tenten remarked, well, I assume someone is going to have to go the counter and pay. Whose turn is it this time? The other women at the table were all leaning back in their seats and clutching their tummies, indicating that they weren't feeling well. Tenten grunted in frustration and rose from her seat. All right, I have a question, but I suppose it's me. Why in the world did you all choose to become pregnant at the same time? Depending on how far along they were, each of the other 5 women's tummies were swollen to varied degrees as they glanced at each other. That is actually a really good question, Sakura remarked. Hinata said, I think it's sweet, adding that all of our children will have the opportunity to grow up together, just like we did. Yes, all of us. Together, Karui remarked in a sarcastic tone. Oh, you know what she meant, Ino chastised the other soon-to-be mother, adding, besides, I think Hinata's right. Well, that'd be very, different from the way I grew up, Temari said as she rubbed her tummy and felt the tiny life she was nourishing inside. How would things be different? From behind her, a well-known voice inquired. Temari turned to face her husband. Oh, nothing, she said. A lot of things, she clarified. So I imagine, said Shikamaru. Have you made the payment yet? Temari said. Tenten's got it, as she began to grab her belongings. I can pay you back, Shikamaru said, turning to face the weapons specialist. Hey, it's all right, Tenten said, waving her hand dismissively. In any case, what is a favor between friends? Shikamaru replied, well, thank you anyway. Are you ready to go? He questioned his spouse. Temari said, yep, as she began to get up from her chair. Are you guys planning something special? Sakura inquired. HMPH, hardly, Shikamaru responded with a friendly grin. We're just going to pick out a paint color for the baby's room. Temari was getting up when he said this, and the Nara clan head put his hand on his wife's back after she stood up. Whatever you pick, I bet he'll love it, Ino said. Temari gave her fellow blonde a suspicious look. Why do you think it will be a boy? Oh, trust me, he'll come out exactly like Shikamaru in every way, Ino smiled. Temari smiled back at Ino and remarked, not if I have anything to say about it, placing her palm theatrically on her stomach and saying, oh wait. Yes, I do. Shikamaru put his hand on his wife's shoulder and said, all right, that's enough. We need to get going. or my mom's going to pick a color for us. We can't have that, Temari said, handling it as seriously as she would a small diplomatic mishap. Thank you for the meal, ladies. We'll need to repeat this at some point. That we do, Hinata concurred. And you guys are going to have to pay for the next 100 whenever those babies start coming out. From the counter, Tenten yelled. What? Confused by the call back to a portion of the discourse he was not present for, Shikamaru inquired. Temari smiled and gently tugged her husband's hand to remind him that it was time to leave. Don't worry about it, she whispered. She stopped in her tracks and let go of Shikamaru's hand as the two left the restaurant hand in hand and headed toward the store, neither of them leading the other. Out of the corner of her eye, she continued to notice the great stone faces of the Hokage, keeping a silent but conspicuous watch over her home. Well, observing the absence, he spoke up. Is there a problem? No, Temari shook her head. The opposite truly, she chuckled, trying to make words come out of her mouth. What I mean. It just hit me that this is my home as much as the hidden sand is. With a gentle smile, Shikamaru approached his wife and took her hands in his. I know, but I'm glad to hear it regardless. Temari laughed a little and pressed her forehead to Shikamaru's shoulder. Sometimes, I think about how close I've gotten to you in this whole village, and don't know if I've done exceptionally well in my work as an ambassador or if I failed spectacularly. Shikamaru said, thinking about this. The former I think. If the point of diplomacy is to bring disparate people together, then I would say our diplomatic relations are as fruitful as any in history. Temari laughed at her husband's response. I like the sound of that.